All right, so what's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. Today is October 11th, 2024, about 4:50 p.m. where I'm at right now. And today we are finishing our fifth book in our Book to React series, Kamala Harris's The Truths We Hold. This is her 2019 memoir. We only have about 2 chapters left. Chapter 9, where she talks about security, like her plans for how she wants to protect America. And the final chapter, chapter 10, is, what she's learned in her life journey so far. And while reading this book, we've covered a lot of ground, at least as far as she wants to tell about her life, her inspiration for getting into the legal field, the people that she grew up around in Northern California, the struggles she had growing up with a single mother, and just her identity as well as a Black woman, as she constantly refers to herself as throughout this text. There are some things in here that I wish she covered, just so we can get a clearer view of her stance, such as her stance regarding Israel. This was written back in 2019, right before her and Joe would end up, getting elected in the election that saw Trump leave office, right? And so the Israel and Palestine issue wasn't front center news back then, but she did talk about in her story how she met her husband Doug, who is, a Jewish man, and maybe Doug had a big influence on why she is such a rabid Zionist as well. So I wish there was something talking about that in this book, but there were some things in this text that I liked, that got me excited as far as the policies. I remember there was a lot of talk in here about expanding Medicare and Medicaid for people, and also talk as well about giving tax credits to middle-class families, basically tax refunds and stuff like that. Sam Seal says, how long did she live in California as a kid? From my recollection, it was until she was about 8 years old. Then she went to Illinois. Then she went to Canada. And then she came back to California by the time she was about 11 or 12, from my understanding. And if that is wrong, you can go back and pick up the book yourself, or you can watch the previous live streams where I read the first chapters. But this book has been the longest one that I've been doing in my Book to React series. I could have blew through this book in a week, but I've been in university. I've been studying in classes, covering a lot of ground and stuff like that. But so far, I'm at least proud that I can say that I've been trying to, do my schoolwork while also doing this side project as well, maintaining my channel with the movie reviews, and also, continuing my journey as an intellectual as best as I can, as a modest intellectual. More content coming soon. Y'all stay on the lookout for that, and subscribe to Backpack Bandits as well for travel content. Sam Seals says, Simon, is she a Black American? Meaning, is she descended from the people who were slaves in what is now the United States of America? No. Is she a person of African ancestry who grew up and was born in the United States? Yes. So it depends on how you define Black American. To me, Blackness does not matter about nationality. Okay? So, Simon, is she Black American? You say no. Okay. So she is not a Black American. Then what is she then? What is she? She identifies as a Black American. It's funny how we can tell other people what they identify as, but we wouldn't want other people to tell us what we are. Because the white supremacists look at you, Sam Seals, and me, Sam Seals, and say, no, you are niggers. The white supremacists look at us and say, you are niggers, Niggers. You are thugs, criminals, gangsters, and niggers. And you are not men. And then we look at them and say, no, we are the face of God. We are the original man. We are noble people. We are honorable people. But the white supremacists look at us and say, no, you're niggers. So we're going to look at Kamala and say, no, she's not Black, but she identifies as Black. So therefore, we are niggers. Okay? Sam Seal says, I can identify as a white man, don't mean it's true. Yes, you can identify as a white man, because newsflash, Sam Seals, like I've said on this channel multiple times, race is not real. It's a social construct. There's no such thing as a Black person and a white person other than what a society deems to be a Black or white person. There are Black as hell people running around Brazil who will swear up and down, me no Black poppy, me no Black poppy. The Dominicans say the same thing. There is no such thing as a white and Black person. Sam Seals, you're pogging it up in Australia right now, laying up with big booty, big titty Australian women. Good for you. When the Australians landed there, they called the Aboriginal people there of Australia Black. Does that mean that they are black as we consider them? Because if an Aboriginal were to come to America and then they were to say that they were black, we would say, oh, hell no, you ain't black. So there is no such thing as blackness or whiteness. We have to remember this. The point of this channel is not to just harp on blackness and whiteness as if they are real things. They are not. They are fictions created by the white supremacists. The same white supremacists that would look at us and say, you are not men, you are niggers. You are animals. You are beasts of burden, meant to be worked until the day you die. So let's not do this type of name calling of people here. The woman said throughout this book, she is black, 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 bliggity, blackity, black, black, black. And I am a man. I am a black, 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 black man because that's how I choose to identify. If a white man were to look at me and say, I'm a nigger, he's going to get packed out. But I am not a nigger. And Kamala does not identify as an Indian woman. She never said so. She never said so. But you saying that she is not black might as well make you a nigger. Might as well make you a stone cold raccoon nigger. That's what you got to be. That's what you got to be. All right. Anyway, continuing here. Chapter 9, Smart on Security. When I arrived in the Senate, I was surprised to learn that there was a seat open in the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. I asked outgoing Senator Barbara Boxer why this was. She told me that the committee's work was fascinating, meaningful, and critical to the country, but that most of it took place behind closed doors. Members of the committee couldn't talk publicly about their activities because reviewing the country's most sensitive intelligence involved the highest levels of security clearance. Consequently, she explained, there usually wasn't much of a spotlight on the committee. Sam Seals says you must be on the payroll. What payroll? What payroll? The Marxist, communist, socialist payroll? Yes, because the Democratic overlords of the Democratic plantation love giving out money to far left-wing Marxists and socialists and communists online. Yes, I must be on the payroll using this old-ass computer that I've had since 2017. Yes, I must be on some sort of payroll wearing shirts that I get from the Goodwill. I must be on the payroll living in a 400 euro apartment per month. I must be on the payroll when I got nothing but ramen noodles up in the cabinet for me to eat later today. I must be on the payroll because overall I'm still wearing 3 pairs of shoes. I must be on the payroll because I have a failing YouTube channel with one person in the live stream who is a dumbass nigga in Australia pogging it up. I must be on the payroll because all I do is read Marxist literature and talk about socialist politics. I must be on the payroll. I have to be. I have to be. I have to be. I have to be really, 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 really bad. I have to be either be a really bad capitalist or a really good communist to be this broke, continue to read books to challenge y'all and challenge the person that I'm reading about and still be this poor. I must be on the payroll. You caught me, Sam Seals. I am on the payroll. I am in the payroll. I'm on the payroll of my audience. Okay? Sam Seals, we know you're pogging it up. We know you're in Australia pogging it up because only a black man with that much white pussy can say the stupid shit that you be saying. Only niggas who get white pussy at that extent and don't hold on to their blackness say this type of stupid shit you be saying. That's the only way. You got to be pogging it up hella hard to say that type of shit. I got a whole bunch of white pussy in my life. Never have I said the stupidest shit that y'all be saying in my comment section. Wife is Somali. And guess what? The Somalis, they know black poppy. Somalis, they know black poppy. They know black. Me know black. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Me know black poppy. That's what the Somalis be doing. Don't matter. Continuing here. That didn't matter to me, said Kamala. I knew that by the very nature of the job, if I had something important to say, I could find a bouquet of microphones to speak into. But when it came to the daily work, I wanted to be informed in real time about the threats facing my constituents and our country. So I joined the Senate Intelligence Committee, fully expecting the work to be done in the shadows, away from the press and outside the day-to-day focus of the national conversation. But days after I was sworn in as a United States Senator, those expectations were upended. On January 6, 2017, the Intelligence Committee released a public assessment that determined that Russia had conducted multiple cyber operations against the United States with the intent of influence the outcome of the 2016 presidential election. Suddenly, our work and investigation into what had gone so terribly wrong would become one of the most consequential undertakings in the history of the Senate. Most of what I do on the committee involves classified information, so there's a real limit to what I can write about here. But there are times when the intelligence community releases its assessments to the public, stripped of the information sources and methods by which the information was obtained, and meticulously written to avoid revealing anything that could compromise national security or endanger people's lives. And there are times when our committee works in close coordination with the intelligence community to release our own assessments publicly so that we can balance the critical need for the American people to know what is happening from our oversight perspective against the equally critical need to keep our intelligence gathering efforts covert. I can and will reference that work. Twice a week, for 2 hours at a time, members of the Intelligence Committee get behind closed doors to speak with the men and women who lead our 17 intelligence agencies and receive briefings on the latest information. I can't tell you the details of what we talk about, but I can tell you what it's like. For starters, the room we gather in is known as SCIF, which stands for Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility. It has been designed to prevent eavesdropping of any kind. Before we enter, we have to put our cell phones in a cupboard outside the door. Inside, we take a classified notes by hand, and even those must be kept locked away in the SCIF. When the committee holds public hearings, Democrats sit on one side of the dais and Republicans on the other as we face witnesses and cameras. But inside the SCIF and away from the cameras, it is a very different environment. Often senators take off their jackets. We get down to business. It is not just the absence of cameras and the seating arrangements that changes the dynamic. It is the work itself. The rigid partisanship that has paralyzed much of Washington somehow fades as we enter the room. We are, all of us, keenly focused on the weights of the work we are undertaking and its consequences. There is simply no room for anything other than a focus on America's national security and the protection of America's privacy and civil liberties. The public can't be there, nor the media, nor other senators who aren't on the committee. It's just us to do overnight with global outreach, to do oversight with global outreach. Sorry. It's just us to do oversight with global reach. Okay. It is invigorating, even inspiring. It is a scene I wish the American people could see, if just for a moment. It is a reminder that even in Washington, some things can be bigger than politics. My work on the Intelligence Committee and the Homeland Security Committee covers a broad range of issues, from building and maintaining counterterrorism capability at home and abroad to the work of disrupting and destroying ISIS, to protecting and securing our borders, to the challenge of nuclear proliferation, and to the ever-delicate balance between gathering intelligence and protecting civil liberties. But rather than run through the laundry list of issues we deal with and all of their complexity, I want to focus on a few of the threats that keep me up at night. All right, Sam Seals says, Simon, is both of your parents Black American? No, my dad is from Alabama, Tennessee. My mama's from Belize. Take with that what you will. I know the musty tether jokes are coming in right now. Musty tether jokes are coming in, but I'll make this absolutely clear. I am all for reparations for the descendants of freedmen of Black Americans. If y'all don't want to give me my check, I'll only take half. I've never once said anything negative about our people. I don't believe that Black Americans have any pathologies. We don't need to pull our pants up, stop listening to rap music, stop having premarital sex, get married at higher rates. None of that. We need to just be people because we have always been a moral, upstanding, upright people who have done the most for our nation and the most for the world. I don't believe in the negative pathologies about Black people like you or anybody else for that matter. If anybody wants to come for me and say things like, oh, Simon, you're a musty tether. Oh, Simon, you're not really Black American because your mama was from a different place. Who gives a fuck? I don't give a fuck what any of y'all have to say about me because I'm standing on my square and I'm always going to speak truth to power. I'm always going to speak truth to power. Continuing here. First and foremost, I think of cybersecurity, a new front in a new kind of battle. If we had a daily visual of attacks underway, of explosions in our cities, of Russian, Chinese, North Korean, and Iranian warplanes overhead, the American people would insist that we respond, clear in the knowledge that the future of the American experiment was very much at risk. But cyber warfare is silent warfare, and its consequences are often difficult to grasp before the damage is done. I sometimes refer to it as a war without blood. There are no soldiers in the field, no bullets and bombs. But the reality is cyber warfare aims to weaponize infrastructure and, at its worst, could result in casualties. Imagine, for example, a cyber attack on railroad switching signals or hospital generators or at a nuclear power plant. The intelligence community companies alike are waging a defensive battle against cyber attacks on a minute-by-minute basis. But the reality is that we still remain unprepared for this new kind of terrain. Our systems and infrastructure need to be seriously upgraded. All right, going to the comments here. How do you feel about Kamala unwavering support for Israel? It's absolutely horrible. And this is one of the things that I say all the time, like about what is the point of having black faces in high places if we're just going to be committing genocide against other races and other people, right? Think about when they wanted to say, oh, Idris Elba should play James Bond. Well, what does James Bond represent? James Bond is the face of neo-imperialism for the British Empire. It's a white man. Generally, so far, it's been a white man running around the world, attacking, assassinating, and committing heinous crimes in the defense of the neo-colonial British Empire. Do we want the same for black people when thousands of years from now, when America is forgotten in the dustbins of history? Do we want to know that Obama was the one pressing the button on drone strikes on children in Yemen? Do we want to know that Kamala, the president, was the one funding Israel to commit a mass slaughter of Palestinians? No, we don't want that. So no, we do not support that. This is the difference between us Marxists, us communists, us socialists, and all you dick-sucking conservative fucktards. Y'all don't have any critique of Trump. Y'all don't have any critique of the right. Y'all don't have any critique of any of the demagogues you follow. Meanwhile, on our side, on the real side, on the trail side of things, we hate all of them. We understand that liberals and the conservatives are both the same wings of the fascist bird. Meanwhile, people that say we're going to vote for Trump have no actual critique of Trump. They have no actual critique of the Republican Party. They have no actual critique of any of their policies. They don't even concern themselves with policies. They just run off gut behavior. Continuing here. All right, Sam Seal says she ain't black, bro. She is a Hindu Indian. She grew up eating naan bread, not cornbread. All right, that's just ignorant, and that's not true. And that's just the type of text that would come from a person who didn't read. And that's the problem with our people. You know what? I'm not even going to say that because I don't believe in any pathologies of black people. None at all. I'm not going to say there's not a black person who doesn't read enough, not a black person who is not educated enough. There's no pathologies without people. I was about to go there, but I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that, but that can only come out of the mouth of a person who didn't read this book. A person who didn't read this book would say something ignorant like that, and that's all I got to say. All right. Sam Seal says, who was making cornbread at her house? As if all of black life it sums up to cornbread, right? It's so funny. We don't want the white supremacists to lay stereotypes at us, summations of us, and what it means for us to be us. Meanwhile, we say stuff like, who was making cornbread at her house? Let's really sit back and think about that statement. Who was making cornbread at her house? Number one, don't these California niggas eat corn tortillas? Y'all California niggas don't even eat collard greens. Y'all California niggas don't know nothing about candy yams. Y'all know more about sopapillas than y'all actually know about sweet potatoes. So what are y'all talking about cornbread at the house? California niggas grow up eating Tabasco sauce and fucking flour tortillas and enchiladas at a soul food cookout. California niggas have nothing but fucking Mexican lowriders bouncing up and down the street, hiding from cholos with tattoos on their head, talking about who was making cornbread at Kamala House. Okay, California niggas outside stomping in hard-tip, wing-tip shoes, wearing fucking Dickie suits with red bandanas on their head, talking about who got cornbread. Bruh, what the fuck? There is not a single black person in California. Yep, Kamala ain't black because ain't no niggas in California. The way the Mexicans run the niggas in California, they ain't no black people in California. That's a big fact. So yeah, I now agree with Sam Seals. Because the Bay Area used to be the home of the writers. Guess where Huey P. Newton was from? Huey P. was from my hometown, Monroe, Louisiana. Because ain't no Bay nigga gonna let a bunch of black men pick up guns and ride on the police. No, them California niggas is all big pussy because they let the Mexicans run them. Norteños, Sureños, all sorts of shit running all over California. So damn right. Kamala ain't black. I agree now with Sam Seals. Kamala ain't black because some California niggas ain't black. Them California niggas talking about we eating fajitas at our cookout. The California niggas have a bunch of Mexican cholos and Mexican and rectangular shaped Mexican baby mamas talking about who making cornbread at Kamala House. Sam Seal says, I'm from East Oakland. They don't run us. You're right. They correo you. They don't run you. They correo. They say, andale, niga. Andale, andale, negro. Andale, negro. Arriba, arriba. Of course, they don't run you because some niggas don't speak English. ain't no niggas in California. There are no black. This is a fact. I'm making this a fact right now. There are no black people in California. Niggas talking about who making cornbread at Kamala's house. Meanwhile, California niggas got that big rolling thing where they just rolling tortillas all day for their Mexican masses. What the fuck are they talking about? Ain't a nigga from California gonna talk about oh man, what type of yay area shit is this? From Oakland to Sacktown, the Bay Area to back down, Mexicans is where they put their Mac down. Give me love. Where you from? Oakland. Smoking. The zips be so fluffy, the whole town love me. Boy, them Mexicans run that whole bitch. They run the whole city. Niggas talking about andale, hola. Niggas talking about como estás, and then they want to talk about cornbread. Get out of here. All right. I'm sorry. That's just hilarious. All right. I'm continuing here. I can't. A California nigga with green eyes and 2C hair can never call anybody and say that person is not black. A California nigga who looks like he could have been in Color Me Bad cannot talk about who is black and who's not. If you pass the brown paper bag test, which a lot of California niggas are so glad that they can do, you cannot talk about who black and who not. I'm sorry. Bro, a California nigga would have an allergic reaction to hog maws. A California nigga would have, I'm just going to start roasting California niggas this entire live stream. A California nigga would have an allergic reaction to fucking chitlins, bro. A California nigga would have a panic attack if he saw a black person doing double dutch. California niggas are allergic to Ohio Players music. A California nigga, like the blackest thing he will ever do is dress up in blackface for his Mexican homies. Okay, Huey P. Newton wasn't dark. He wasn't dark, but guess what he was? A Louisiana nigga. Huey P. Newton was a real Louisiana writer. We are taking Huey P. Newton back from California because the way these California niggas have become so bitch made that they're now worshiping a fat, white, blonde, blue-eyed, white supremacist named Donald Trump. No, we're taking Huey P. Newton back from California. Till California get their shit right, until Californians start letting Mexicans run the whole goddamn state. We taking Huey P. back. We taking the whole Black Panthers back. We taking them back to Louisiana. Where they from? Huey P. Newton was from Monroe, Louisiana. Big dick nigga. Big dick Louisiana nigga. Not no 3C haired, green-eyed, brown paper bag motherfucking California nigga. Horrible. I'm sorry. Where was I? I'm off track. All right, sorry. One more thing. When a California nigga sees a black woman darker than him, he calls the police. All right, that's all I had to say. We are currently under attack. Our elections are top of mind, especially given the nefarious and effective attacks by the Russian government. The January 2017 assessment found that Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered an influence campaign in 2016 aimed at the U.S. presidential election. Russia's goals were to undermine public faith in the U.S. democratic process, denigrate Secretary Clinton, and harm her electability and potential presidency. Though many have become numb to it through the news cycle, the significance of this finding is hard to overstate. The intelligence community assessed with a high degree of confidence that Russia's intelligence services conducted cyber operations to hack into a U.S. presidential campaign and to release data they gathered with the intent of influencing the outcome of the election. Russian agents and propagandists exploited U.S. social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube to spread false and inflammatory information about Secretary Clinton and stoke divisions in the United States. And what I think is very telling is exactly how they went about it. They focused on hot button issues from race to LGBTQ and immigrant rights. This means that they knew that racism and other forms of hate have always been our nation's Achilles heel. They knew precisely where to strike us, deliberately targeting and tearing away at some of the most painful, divisive parts of our nation's history. I first made this point during an Intelligence Committee meeting. A few days later, I was sitting at my desk on the Senate floor. The last one in the far back. I had chosen the desk for two reasons. It wasn't visible on the C-SPAN cameras, which made it easier for me to concentrate on the work at hand. But more important, it was the desk closest to the candy drawer. I swear, Kamala be munching on Doritos and candy throughout this entire book. Her pH levels are insane. Them drawers probably got all sorts of stains and marks, all sorts of stuff. Them farts must be out of this world. When Kamala lets loose one of them gassy little farts, that I bet Doug got to roll every window down in the crib. Got to roll down every window in the car, lift up every window in the crib, all sorts of stuff, because she just be consuming Doritos and candy throughout this entire book. Sam Seal says, you worshiping and Hindu and telling us she's black. I'm full black American. You know nothing about Oakland. Actually say that. Well, I'm a keep it on the real. I voted for a real Southern nigga who unfortunately moved to the Bay Area. And guys, for anybody who wants to come in here and say Simon Hill, the Democratic shill, please go watch the video where I literally show who I voted for. Guys, it's not a secret who I voted for. I showed y'all. I showed you my ballot. I showed you my ballot on who I voted for. I put my money where my mouth is. I'm not a California nigga, confused and out of his mind, high as hell on hydroponic weed, listening to Dr. Dre's 2001 on repeats for the 1,000th time while a Mexican is running me out of my hood while I'm chomping on a tamale. Okay? All right? I am not a tamale eating, burrito consuming, enchilada eviscerating California nigga. This is real. This is field nigga talking. When you hear a California nigga talk, that is house nigga talk. This is field nigga business right here. We are not defending some Hindu Indian woman here. This is not house nigga talk. This is real field nigga talk. This is Simon Hill keeps a trail out in the field. All right, we running drills. Okay, this is not that. This is this, that is that, and this ain't that. You feel me? All right, continuing here. So I first made this point during an Intelligence Committee meeting. A few days later, I was sitting at my desk on the Senate floor, the last one in the far back. I had chosen the desk for two reasons. It wasn't visible on the C-SPAN cameras, which made it easier for me to concentrate on the work at hand. But more important, it was the desk closest to the candy drawer. I looked up and noticed the Senator James Lankford, a Republican from Oklahoma, was walking toward me, literally crossing the aisle so we could have a conversation. Kamala, I've been listening to what you've been saying about your race as our Achilles heel, and I think you're onto something important, he said. Personally, I think it starts with the question, have you had a family over to your house that doesn't look like you? Have you ever really had that kind of interaction? I think that's a good place to start. I'm glad to hear you say that, I told him. We have to start somewhere. All right. So Lankford and I sat across from each other in a closed session of the Intelligence Committee. And though there are very few things we agree about when it comes to policy, I found him to be genuinely kind and thoughtful. It didn't take long for us to build a friendship. All right, Sam Seal says, you're not a field nigga. Your family ain't even from Louisiana. My family from Louisiana. Homer, you're right. You're right, guys. He caught me. We're not from the actual fields. We from the killing fields of Alabama. Yeah, ain't that even right? See, look at that. I was trying to make myself feel a little bit better by claiming Louisiana, even though I grew up there all my life. All I know is Louisiana. But yeah, you're right. You're right. My daddy was a runaway who didn't know which way the North Star was and ended up running his ass to Louisiana instead of Alabama, where I was born. Born in Alabama, raised in Louisiana and Texas all my life. All my life, all my life, I know crack ass crackers and nigga ass niggas. Not no crazy ass Mexicans running me up and down out of my hood and being gentrified as fuck in East Oakland. In the Bay Area, nah, ain't no none of that. Ain't no talking about some yee. Ain't no none of that. None of that. All we know is wow, what's happening? You feel me? But I cannot let a green-eyed Belle Biv DeVoe, color me bad, United Colors of Benetton, ass nigga, come in here and talk about all this big black business when he is denying a person his blackness. How the hell can you do that? How does that make sense? You worship a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white supremacist, racist, rapist bimbo named Donald Trump, and we want to come in here and question other people's blackness because Massa said so. But then they want to say, Simon Hill, you don't keep it trill. I always keep it trill. I told y'all who I'm voting for, showed y'all my ballot, endorsed the same person throughout this year. And I've been fair because I read the Bimbo's book and I'm reading Kamala's book. Before this book, what book did I read, class? What book did I read? I read Donald Trump's trash-ass book. I read Donald Trump's trash-ass book for all of y'all. Y'all can read it and see it. I've been fair. And I've been killing Kamala reading this book. But y'all don't listen. There are no pathologies with black people. But if there's one issue that I'm seeing in my chat, it's that niggas do not read. So Sam Seals can't spell Belizean. He said Besleyan. I don't know where Beslia is. Beslia might be the name of his mama. It's got to be the name of his mama. Because that sounds very Mexican. I think Sam Seals is Mexican because there are no black people in California. All the black people got killed in the genocide of 1994 when the Mexicans just went on a killing spree and the niggas just went back and held their hands up. All right. Besleyan, Mr. Clean head ass nigga. Yes, I am Mr. Clean. I'm clean as fuck and fresh as fuck. That's the thing that happens when you come from the boots, when you come from the bottom of the map, and you don't have to run to the bottom of the world like Australia. We're not here denying people's blackness. The only reason you're getting attacked is if you ever attack another black person's blackness. That don't make no sense. At the very least, if a person identifies as black and they visibly look black, we shouldn't just follow the words of a blonde-haired, blue-eyed bimbo who is just trying to seek re-election and question another person's blackness. I don't know what part of the game is that. You get my... Just saying she ain't black is all right. Sam Seals, she ain't black and you aren't black either. You are a nigger. Because I guess identities can be defined by other people. So you're saying she ain't black, we'll just say you're a nigger. Deal. All right? You're not a man. You're not a human. You're an animal. You're a beast. You are meant to be a slave. You are less than human. You are less intelligent. You are not even worthy of having a soul, as what the white supremacists would tell us. So because we cannot ever claim our own identity, and even though she has a right to claim this identity because her father is visibly black, you are a nigger, and she ain't black. So that makes it fair. Because now we live in this world now, according to these dumbasses who just follow the words of a white supremacist, let's let other people define us. So Sam Seals, you are Nigger, and she could be not black. She could be a Hindu, whatever. And I don't even care if she's black or not. But we have to be logically consistent here. What does identity mean? This ain't even about Kamala, whatever y'all want to call her. It's about identity and race. Race is not real. Race is a social construct. If we choose to participate in it, we should be able to choose which side of the field we're on. I identify as black because it makes the most sense in this time and age that we're living in. She identifies as black because it makes the most sense for how she was treated in the day and age she's living in. But if we're just going to say, well, we just get to pick and choose now, I guess all the time she was followed around the stores, all the time that she was abused, all that sort of stuff, that doesn't matter. Sam Seals says Black American is an ethnicity. Ethnicity doesn't matter, Sam Seals, because according to your worldview, how people identify with doesn't matter. So your ethnicity is nigger. Her ethnicity, according to you, is not black. I'm saying she is black. We live in a confused world. I'm glad we're finally abolishing race. We got stupid niggers up in the chat saying dumbass shit. So people's identity will just be what it is. We can just call people whatever they want. Forget whatever they are. I'm not a man, and Sam Seals, you're not a man. You're a woman. You're a bitch. Because whatever you define as, I don't know. So you could just be a woman. You're light skinned like all of my broads, so you must be a bitch. Maybe I could put my dick up in you and nut up in you. Because that's what must be what it is. It doesn't matter what people identify as. It just matters on how we label and define them. Okay, if that's the case, Sam Seals, suck my dick and let me put my dick up in you and let me nut up in you. Deal. We did that deal. And Kamala ain't black. She ain't black. Deal? Okay, that makes absolute total sense. This makes absolute total sense. How stupid can people be? How stupid? They just have to be dumb. They just really have to be dumb. Anyway, I'm continuing here. So, anyway, together with our colleagues in the committee, together with our colleagues on the committee, we spent more than a year working with the intelligence community to understand the information that led to the January 2017 assessment about Russian attacks. Of particular interest to me was the threat of Russian penetration of our election equipment itself. In May 2018, we released our preliminary findings on the issue of election security. We let the public know that in 2016, the Russian government had conducted a coordinated cyber campaign against the election infrastructures of at least 18 individual states, and possibly as many as 21. Other states also saw malicious activity, which the intelligence community has been unable to attribute to Russia. What we do know is that Russian operatives scanned election databases looking for vulnerabilities. They attempted to break in, and in some cases, they were actually successful in penetrating voter registration databases. Thankfully, as of May 2018, our community had not seen any evidence that actual vote tallies of our voter registration rolls were changed. But given our limited information on state audits and forensic examinations of states' own election infrastructure, we cannot rule out that activities were successfully carried out that we just don't know about yet. In our report, we raised concerns about a number of potential vulnerabilities that remain in our election infrastructure. Voting systems are outdated, and many of them do not have a paper record of votes. Without a paper record, there is no way to reliably audit a vote tally and confirm that numbers haven't been changed. We found that 30 states use paperless voting machines in some jurisdictions, and that 5 states use them exclusively, leaving them vulnerable to manipulation that cannot be reconciled and reversed. We also found that many of our election systems are connected to the internet, leaving them open to hacking. Even systems not regularly connected to the internet are nevertheless updated by software that must be downloaded from the internet. All right, my bottom bitch, our top bitch, and our top nigger bitch, our top big booty nigger bitch, our top big booty light skinned nigger bitch, Sam Seals, said something in the chat. So our big booty nigger bitch said, do something about that bald ass head. I would be mad too if my hairline was back in Louisiana. Listen, man. The beautiful thing about being black is that you can be bald and make it look beautiful. I don't get how people can claim that they are pro-black or they love black people and make fun of one of the beautiful things about being black, which is that you can have a bald head. Sam Seals couldn't have a bald head because he's a big booty, light-skinned bitch, and so he can never shave it off because then that's going to lose him points in the marketplace of attraction, right? But I understand women are going to do women things. So what y'all are going to see in the chat is that Sam Seals is going to get really catty now because his estrogen levels are really high. His estrogen levels are really high because we've now decided what his identity is going to be. And we made a great trade with him. Kamala, a black woman all her life, up until a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, fat rapist named Donald Trump said she's not black, had been black all her life. She's now apparently not black because I guess white people can tell us what we are and what we're not. So what we're doing is doing the same thing. We have a big light skin, we have a big booty, light skin, red bone up in the chat. So everybody holla at Sam Seals, try to get their numbers and try to put their dick up in them. You feel me? Because we know how to treat these hoes. These hoes gonna talk crazy. All the hoes know how to do is say shit like, you gay nigga, you got a little dick, and you bald. That's what the hoes gonna do. So that's what we're gonna notice Sam Seals gonna do in these next few comments. You get what I'm saying? Them California bitches. What did Katy Perry say? California girls. California girls. Man, them California girls, they be wildin', huh? Anyway, let the bitches talk. Let them bitches talk. Anyway, continuing here. It's misleading to suggest that impenetrable cybersecurity is possible. Our focus must be on defending against, detecting, deterring, managing, and mitigating any effort to do us harm. There's a grim joke. What's the difference between being hacked and not being hacked? Knowing you've been hacked. The truth hurts, but we simply can't afford to be naive. To help members of Congress and their staffs understand the nature of the risk, I invited a computer science and engineering professor from the University of Michigan to visit the Capitol and demonstrate the ease with which a hacker could change an election's outcome. We gathered in a room in the Capitol Visitor Center where the professor had set up a paperless voting machine used in numerous states, including swing states like Florida, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. 4 senators participated: Senators Lankford, Richard Burr, Claire McCaskill, and me, and the room was filled with staffers who had come to better understand the process. The professors simulated a vote for president where we were given a choice between George Washington and the infamous Revolutionary War traitor Benedict Arnold. As you might imagine, all 4 of us voted for George Washington, but when the results came back, Benedict Arnold had prevailed. The professor had used malicious code to hack the software of the voting machine in a way that assured Arnold's victory, no matter how the 4 of us had voted. He told us that the machine was very easily hacked, enough so that in a demonstration elsewhere, he turned one into a video game console and played Pac-Man on it. Can you imagine? America's electoral infrastructure consists of outdated machines and local officials who often have little or no cyber threat training. When you consider how many major corporations have experienced data breaches, despite having invested in the best cybersecurity money can buy, our vulnerability becomes all the more stark. Some might think it is alarmist to be talking this way, but I think we should be preparing to defend against the worst case scenario, that foreign actors will target these outmoded machines and manipulate vote tallies. Wow. Okay. See, this is the thing. Trump was saying the entire time the election was stolen, the election was hacked. I don't know if anybody in his campaign, or of course Trump himself didn't read, but why didn't anybody bring this up? Kamala is saying in her book right here that it's very likely that our election machines could be hacked, hypothetically, right? Because she's talking about hackers breaking into the system, playing Pac-Man on the machines, manipulating the votes to get whatever system they want. Now, in America, we have a lot of paper ballots. So technically, there is not a lot of digital voting. There's not a lot of just, pressing numbers on the screen and then it goes into a database, right? You press the information and then it's copied onto a paper ballot, right? At least that's how it is in Louisiana and in Florida where I voted. I've only voted in 2 states. But I'll just say this. I find that very fascinating that nobody brought that up. Nobody brought up that Kamala is saying that it's actually likely or possible for our election to be hacked by outside forces. Anyway, given Russia's unprecedented effort to undermine confidence in our election system while attempting to interfere with the outcome of a presidential election, there's no question that the Kremlin is emboldened, along with other state and non-state actors, to try again. At the time, James Lankford and I were the only members of the Senate who served on both the Homeland Security and Intelligence committees. As such, we were uniquely suited to come together in a nonpartisan way to develop a legislation to combat these attacks. At the end of December 2017, together with other senators, we introduced a bill, the Secure Elections Act, that will protect the United States from future foreign interference in our elections. The legislation, which grew out of hearings and testimony in front of both the Homeland Security and Intelligence committees, would improve cybersecurity information sharing between federal and state agencies. It would create a process by which election officials could receive top secret security clearance, allowing them to have timely access to classified material, as in a case where we learned that Russia had attacked their machines. It would establish clear expert guidelines for securing election systems, including, for example, the need for paper ballots. Russia might be able to hack a machine from afar, but it can't hack a piece of paper, and it would provide a $386 million in grants for cybersecurity improvements. It would also establish what's known as a bug bounty program for election infrastructure, commonly used in tech firms. A bug bounty is a system in which altruistic hackers are paid for identifying software vulnerabilities. It's an economically efficient way to quickly patch bugs that could be exploited by malicious actors. We owe it to ourselves to continually test our system security, just as we test the smoke alarm in our home. No one wants to wait for the house to catch on fire in order to realize the battery is dead. Remarkably, despite the eve of votes in the United States Senate, though it was introduced nearly a year before the 2018 midterm elections, the White House opposed the bill, and Senate Majority Leader refused to bring it to the floor. And so I am indeed kept up at night, knowing the scale of our vulnerabilities and knowing that actions we should be taking immediately to have stalled out without any justification. It's also important to remember that election systems aren't the only area in which we are vulnerable to foreign interference. In March 2018, for example, the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI issued a joint alert that showed that Russian hackers had gained access to the computer systems of organizations and U.S. government entities in sectors ranging from energy and water to aviation and manufacturing. DHS and the FBI described the actions as a multi-stage intrusion campaign by Russian government cyber actors who targeted commercial facilities, networks, and staged malware, conducted spear phishing, and gained remote access into energy sector networks. After they got access, the Russians did extensive reconnaissance. They were able to gain access to at least one power plant's control system, and they placed tools in the systems that would allow them, in certain cases, to shut down power plants at will. This is, needless to say, an extraordinary vulnerability. Millions of Americans recall the blackout of August 2003, when an electricity surge overloaded the grid, covering parts of 8 northeastern states. Major cities were plunged into darkness. Fire departments rushed to free people from elevators as building temperatures rose. Hundreds of trains were stopped in their tracks, and thousands of passengers had to be rescued from darkened subway tunnels. Waste treatment plants lost power. 490 million gallons of raw sewage were spilled in the New York City alone. Cell phone service was disrupted. ATMs went down. Hospitals had to rely on generators to care for vulnerable patients. Analysts later concluded that mortality rates in New York City rose 28% during the 2-day blackout. Nelson Moreno says Kamala ain't black, says the House Negro. Oh man, it was getting crazy in here. It was getting crazy in here for a minute. In the intelligence community's worldwide threat assessment in 2018, the Director of National Intelligence detailed increased risks to critical infrastructure. Over the coming year, the use of cyber attacks as a foreign policy tool outside of military conflict has been mostly limited to sporadic low-level attacks. The report explained Russia, Iran, and North Korea, however, are testing more aggressive cyber attacks that pose growing threats to the United States and U.S. partners. Iran, which in the past has attacked a large U.S. corporation and stolen personal data, is expected to continue its work penetrating the United States cyber infrastructure. North Korea, which conducted a destructive attack on Sony in November 2014, and which the U.S. government identified as responsible for a massive cyber attack in the United Kingdom that paralyzed that country's healthcare system, is expected to use its cyber operations to steal money in the wake of sanctions, as it did in 2016, when it took $81 million from the Bangladesh bank. China, meanwhile, has been advancing its own cyber attack capabilities since 2015 and has directed attacks at U.S. private industry, particularly defense contractors and IT communications firms, whose products and services support worldwide networks. An investigation by the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative found that Chinese theft of American intellectual property costs us more than $200 billion annually. And then there are non-state actors. As the D&I threat assessment indicates, transnational criminals will continue to conduct for-profit cyber-enabled crimes, such as theft and extortion against U.S. networks. This is costly business. In February 2018, cybersecurity software provider McAfee and the Nonpartisan Center for Strategic and International Studies released a report that put such cyber crimes tolls in North America at $140 billion to $175 billion. And we can also expect state actors to fund such criminal activity, which represents both an inexpensive and deniable way for them to pursue their malicious aims. Cybersecurity has become one of the highest priorities in the new age. It's not enough to make sure that our troops have the very best weapons when they go into battle. We have to make sure our military intelligence community and private sector have the very best cyber defense to protect against these new and ever-changing threats. As General Keith Alexander, former NSA director and inaugural head of U.S. Cyber Command, said in 2016, Department of Defense systems are probed by hackers about 250,000 times an hour. That's 6 million times each day. In a world where tech can be weaponized, we need to deploy the very best technology in order to respond, and that means constantly upgrading our efforts so that we are always a step ahead. I remember that when I first became Attorney General in 2011, I was shocked by what we lacked in terms of technology. So I put together a team led by Special Assistant Attorney General Travis LeBlanc to upgrade and overhaul our system so that we could better fight crime in the digital era. In my first year in office, we organized an e-crime unit, which we staffed with attorneys and investigators who focused on technology-related crimes like identity theft and cyber exploitation. I spent much of the remainder of my tenure working to institutionalize California's technological advantages. Those efforts culminated in the creation of our Cybercrime Center, which gave all of our tech crime fighters access to state-of-the-art digital forensics capabilities, making California one of the first states to do so. But in addition to deploying our best technology now, we need to invest in the innovations and breakthroughs that we'll need in order to stay protected down the line. That's one of the reasons I put forward a bill to invest in quantum computing, a frontier technology that will put the United States at the forefront of the race for technological superiority. Our pursuit of innovation cannot be viewed from an economic lens alone. It matters to national security too. It's also one of the reasons I believe we must be a country that welcomes highly skilled students and professionals from around the world to study at our universities and work at our companies. Ultimately, I believe we're going to need to develop a cyber doctrine. As a matter of principle, we will have to decide when and whether a cyber attack is an act of war and what kind of response it warrants. This is the thing about cybersecurity, why I didn't give any sort of commentary on that. I kind of don't care. Not saying it's not important. I just don't feel impassioned about this topic. Go in here. On January 12, 2017, Mike Pompeo came before the Senate Intelligence Committee for his confirmation hearing as CIA director. By tradition, questions at public hearings are asked in order of seniority. So, as the newest member of the committee, I questioned Pompeo last. Throughout the hearings, I listened as my colleagues asked Pompeo a wide range of questions, touching on traditional issues ranging from intelligence sharing and collection to preventing terrorist attacks in the United States and abroad. When it was finally my turn, I focused on a subject area that seemed to surprise Pompeo and others on the committee. I wanted to know how his public position rejecting the science of climate change was going to impact his role at the top of America's intelligence apparatus. Right-wing pundits from Fox to the Heritage Foundation took great pleasure in calling my questions dumb, ridiculous, and off base. Evidently, they felt my concerns were divorced from issues of national security, but they were wrong. This was about analytic objectivity and not politicizing intelligence. The CIA had already made an unclassified assessment regarding the threats of climate change. Pompeo's previous statements disregarded the CIA assessment. How would he brief the president? Would he let his personal views override the findings of CIA professionals when it came to climate change? And if so, what would that mean for other dire threats against our nation? Climate change can be seen from many angles. Some see it purely as an environmental issue. They point to the destruction of habitats, the melting of ice sheets, and the coming mass extinction of species. Others see it as a public health issue that demands a world where clean air and clean water are readily available. There is also the economic dimension of climate change. Ask farmers about the complexity of their work, about their precise and measured focus on weather patterns, about the incredibly narrow margins that exist between a successful harvest and a ruinous one, and you will come to understand that extreme weather events and unpredictable shifts in the climate are nothing to dismiss. But when you speak to generals, when you speak to senior members of the intelligence community and experts on international conflicts, you will find that they look at climate change as a national security threat, a threat multiplier that will exacerbate poverty and political instability, creating conditions that enable violence, despair, even terrorism. An unstable, erratic climate will beget an unstable, erratic world. For example, climate change will lead to droughts. Droughts will lead to famine. Famine will drive desperate people to leave their homes in search of sustenance. Massive flows of displaced people will lead to refugee crises. Refugee crises will lead to tension and instability across borders. Climate change also increases the risk of deadly global pandemics making their way to the United States. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported that between 2006 and 2016, the number of Americans infected by diseases like West Nile, Zika, and Lyme more than tripled. As temperatures continue to warm, diseases are flourishing in parts of America where they wouldn't have been able to survive in the past. In fact, the CDC has already identified 9 types of infections that had never been seen before in the U.S. The hard truth is that climate change is going to cause terrible instability and desperation, and that will put American national security at risk. That's why former CIA Director John Brennan has said that when CIA as a national security threat of the highest priority. That's why the Pentagon has been ahead of the curve in developing resilience to the effects of climate change, including strategies to protect the dozens of military bases that will be affected by rising seas and extreme weather events. And it's why I didn't hesitate in asking the person who would become the nation's CIA director how and whether climate change would be a factor in his strategy to protect the American people. This isn't the stuff of science fiction or of a dystopian novel set far in the future. Climate-driven crisis is already on the rise. In late 2017, for example, water reserves fell so low in Cape Town, South Africa, that the city of more than 3 million people, South Africa's second largest, was at risk of having its taps run dry. Residents started showering over buckets so they could reuse the water in their washing machines. Farmers had to abandon about a quarter of their crops. This is an issue we will face at home too, and it's a matter of national security that we prepare for it. We need a diversified water security strategy to ensure a reliable, sustainable supply. Growing up in California, I understood from an early age that the water supply is precious and precarious. In elementary school, my classmates and I studied ecology. I remember my mother smiling when she had to explain to me the difference between a conservative and conservationist. I saw the droughts of 1976 and 1977 through a child's eyes. Unflushed toilets, shower timers, and dried out brown lawns. I think a lot about water security, and I never take it for granted. A diversified approach would work on multiple fronts simultaneously. Conservation is the cheapest, most effective way to increase our water resources, but we also need to update our aging water infrastructure, improve our stormwater capture and storage capacity, and make smart investments in water recycling, purification, and desalination. There's a lot we can learn from friends and partners who have already made such investments, especially Israel. Okay, here we go. Here we go. I knew Israel was coming. I knew it. I said this at the beginning of the live stream. I wonder what she's going to say about Israel, because so far Israel has not come up in this book unless she was talking about visiting like the Israeli courts, like the Supreme Court, the Israeli Supreme Court. Let's see what she says. So, Israel, a global leader on water security issues, except for Gaza. In February 2018, I traveled to Israel and toured its Sorek desalination plant, which uses reverse osmosis to produce clean drinking water from the sea. I had a glass. It tasted as good as any water I've ever had. And that's not all. As many have said, the Israelis have made the desert bloom. They've done so in part by successfully reclaiming 86% of their wastewater and purifying it for agricultural reuse. By contrast, the United States, which produces 32 billion gallons of municipal wastewater each day, reclaims only 7 to 8%. Surely we can do better than that. J.S. Ventris, Israel has the cleanest water, food, and morality. Facts. I know, right? The best morality, right? The cleanest water, except for the Gazans. Anyway, conserving water and safeguarding against scarcity must be a top priority. The same can be said in this era of climate change for the need to protect against floods. In India, Bangladesh, and Nepal, flooding in the summer of 2017 killed 1,200 people and affected more than 40 million people. Keep in mind, guys, this is only, 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we're having all these climate catastrophes happen. And we're looking at what's happening now in Florida with Hurricane Milton barreling into the state. It's only going to get worse. Like, things are only going to get worse from here in regards to the climate. Like, the ship has sailed. Greta Thunberg can hang it up. She can just go thought it up in Sweden, because the only safe places in the world in the future will be the Arctic North. If you're not living in Scandinavia, you might as well learn how to swim. Going to JS Ventures here in the chat. He said Palestinians in the Gaza didn't get enough water before the war. That's a fact. Will she mention the apartheid? No, she probably won't mention the apartheid either. But this is one of the most interesting things about the book. She literally talks about everything, every policy except Israel, which is strange, which is very strange. I know at the time in 2019, the world has sort of forgotten about Israel. Like, I feel like there was a good decade, like from 2014 up until, last year, there was like almost 10 years when the world didn't think about Israel, Palestine, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, right? But yeah, she doesn't mention that. She doesn't mention this in this book. And we've read every chapter so far. Continuing here. Conserving water and safeguarding against scarcity must be a top priority. The same can be said in the era of climate change for the need to protect against floods. In India, Bangladesh, and Nepal, flooding in the summer of 2017 killed 1,200 people and affected more than 40 million. Nearly 1 million homes were destroyed. In 2010, flooding in Pakistan rocked 20% of the country, killing more than 1,700 people and affecting at least 12 million. Here at home, the destructive force of Hurricane Maria left the island of Puerto Rico in ruins. I visited Puerto Rico in November 2017 and saw some of that devastation firsthand. Homes obliterated, roads collapsed and destroyed, and the community in crisis. It was disheartening. The official death toll has been revised from 64 to more than 2,900. But a report from scientists at Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health estimates that the storm and its aftermath were responsible for the deaths of at least 4,600 American citizens in Puerto Rico. And if it isn't floods, it's fires. Fires aren't caused by climate change, but they are exacerbated by it. Higher temperatures and longer dry spells turn our forests into kindling. California has always had wildfires, but because of climate change, they are becoming more frequent and getting bigger and bigger. When I was Attorney General, I had toured a fire overhead by helicopter. From that height, the scale of the devastation came into view. Entire streets, entire neighborhoods burned to the ground. It looked like a graveyard with chimneys as headstones. In August 2018, I flew home to California to meet with firefighters and evacuees from the Mendocino complex fire, which burned more than 450,000 acres, making it the largest fire in the state's history. When I arrived in Lake County, I went to a convention center where evacuated families were being sheltered temporarily. Some of them knew they had lost their homes and all of their possessions. Others were left to wonder. I met a mom who was pregnant with her third child. She was trying to keep her family spirits up. I remember how proud her daughter was to show me how neatly she had tidied the sheets on top of the Red Cross cots where they now slept. A year later, I met a firefighter who lost his own home in a fire he was fighting. He said he had always thought he understood the pain of losing everything, given how often he had seen it happen to others, but that it was so much worse than he imagined. Still, he reminded himself and me it wasn't as bad as the families that got the call that their husband or son had been one of the many firefighters who lost their lives that year. There is a theme that runs through all of these issues, be it cybersecurity or climate change or keeping aggressors like Russia and North Korea in check. Though the United States is a superpower, there are real limits to what we can do alone. In order to keep the American people safe, in order to ensure that our national interests and homeland are secure, we must work in partnership with our allies, economically, diplomatically, and militarily. We must protect NATO, the most important defensive treaty that the world has ever known, especially in the face of Russia's increasingly flagrant aggression. We must rejoin the Paris Agreement, because only together can we reverse the trends of climate change and prevent some of its more terrifying outcomes. And we must remind ourselves that the work we do to protect the American people must also be in the service of American values. That's the actions we take project project a message to the world about who we are. It was the final truism that I held in mind when Gina Haspel came before our committee in a confirmation hearing to replace Mike Pompeo as CIA director. Haspel, a 33-year veteran of the CIA, had been at the agency during a time when prisoners were tortured. She had been asked many questions about this work by other senators, about whether her actions had been legal, about whether she would ever authorize such actions again. When it was my turn to speak, I underscored that this hearing wasn't about the incredible and unquestionable importance of the service and sacrifice of the men and women of the CIA, nor was it about the agency's mission, both of which I wholeheartedly support. The hearing, I explained, was about her suitability to be the director of the CIA, and it was our job as senators to understand that those we chose for that position would send a signal to the men and women of the agency, the American people, and our neighbors around the world about our values and our moral authority. With that in mind, I initiated what became a revealing exchange. So one question I have not heard you answer is, do you believe that the previous interrogation techniques were immoral? Haspel paused as she considered the answer. Senator, I believe that CIA officers to whom you refer, it's a yes or no answer. Do you believe the previous interrogation techniques were immoral? I'm not asking, do you believe they were legal? I'm asking, do you believe they were immoral? She paused again. Senator, I believe that CIA did extraordinary work to prevent another attack on this country, given the legal tools that we were authorized to use. Okay, this is ridiculous. Kamala is stupid as hell. This is really stupid as hell. This is stupid as fuck. What is the woman going to say? You're asking Gina Haspel, this career woman, cold as ice career woman, just like you, Kamala, the other side of the coin, who sacrificed her life, her femininity, her everything to the service of white supremacist patriarchy, to rise to the level of the CIA where she is now inflicting brutal torture on Arab, Muslim, Afghani, Persian men in some black site in the Philippines, having men have their nuts twisted and tangled and electrocuted on their nipples and kept up for days in sleep deprivation while, while Eminem blasts in the cells, all the stuff that America loves to do to the prisoners, right? America, the land of the free, home of the brave, got a whole torture detention center called Guantanamo Bay. Gina Haspel doesn't have to answer the question, is it immoral? Who gives a fuck about morality? This is America. Kamala, you just said that you support the CIA's mission wholeheartedly. The very mission of the CIA is immoral. To do international spying on behalf of the US government, to topple democratically elected leaders, to kill democratically elected leaders in different countries, all the things that America has done. You're going to ask Gina Haspel, is it moral to torture prisoners of war, terrorists, suspected terrorists? But would she be wrong to ask you, is it wrong for the CIA? Is it moral for the CIA to exist? Is it moral for the FBI to exist? Is it moral for the United States government to exist? An entire nation built on genocide and slavery and thievery of an entire land. It doesn't make sense. This is stupid as hell. What's the point of asking this woman, is it immoral? You're just trying to go viral. You're just trying to go viral. This is dumb as hell. This is why liberals are just as bad as conservatives. They just want to finger wag and virtue sick people. I told that woman torture was immoral, and her refusal to answer shows a lot about her morality. Who the fuck? We know the conservatives don't have any morality. They don't even have intelligence. That's why they're voting for Donald Trump, and that's why they vote for the Republicans. They don't have any morality. They don't have any intelligence. Asking a CIA director, hey, is torture immoral? It's like asking the bear, is eating the rabbit wrong? I don't care. Immorality is essential to the job. It's like asking the shark, is it wrong to eat fish? Do you feel bad about eating the octopus, Mr. Shark? Do you feel bad about torturing anybody, Mr. CIA operative? Doesn't make sense. Really dumb. Anyway, I don't care. I don't care about any of this part. I'm going to read it anyway. So Gina Haspel says, Senator, I think I've answered the question. Kamala says, no, you have not. Do you believe the previous techniques, now armed with hindsight, do you believe they are immoral? Yes or no? Senator, I believe that we should hold ourselves to the morals outlined in the Army Field Manual. Shortly after Haspel refused to answer the question, the late Senator John McCain, who had been subjected to 5 years of brutal torture as a prisoner of war in North Vietnam, released a statement saying that he would not support her confirmation as CIA director. Like many Americans, I understand the urgency that drove the decision to resort to so-called enhanced interrogation methods after our country was attacked. McCain wrote, I know that those who used enhanced interrogation methods and those who approved them wanted to protect Americans from harm. I appreciate their dilemma and the strain on their duty. But as I have argued many times, the methods we employ to keep our nation safe must be as right and just as the values we aspire to live up to and promote in the world. All right, James Venture said, that's the kind of question the third graders make when making school trips. Exactly. Is it moral? Teacher, is it moral that the Pilgrims took the land from the Indians? Who cares? The Pilgrims about whether it was moral or not, right? Anyway, I can continue here. I believe Gina Haspel is a patriot who loves our country and has devoted her professional life to its service and defense. He continued. However, Ms. Haspel's role in overseeing the use of torture by Americans is disturbing. Her refusal to acknowledge torture's immorality is disqualifying. Her refusal to acknowledge torture's immorality is disqualifying. So let me ask you this. Kamala, or hypothetically, let's say we were confirming a Supreme Court justice, and we were asking the Supreme Court justice, hey, how do you feel about solitary confinement? How do you feel about the fact that right now thousands of prisoners across the U.S. are kept in cell blocks for 24 hours a day? 24 hours a day with no human contact. No human contact. Oh, sorry if that's wrong. If it's not 24 hours a day, 23 hours a day with only some supervised release with no contact with other prisoners. Usual punishment. And if that person says the prevailing opinion, which is the prevailing opinion in America, that no, that's not torture. Keeping somebody in lockdown for 23 hours a day with no human contact is not torture. If they say that, when we say, oh, that immoral person, how are we going to say that's immoral? America, by and large, thinks it's okay to torture Muslims. It's okay to torture suspected terrorists if you don't want to call them Muslims, if you don't want to say, oh, America's not Islamophobic. Because right now, most Americans agree it's okay what we are doing in Gaza. It's okay what we're doing in the West Bank. It's okay what Israel is doing in Lebanon. So what is this? Her refusal to acknowledge torture's immorality is disqualifying. If I remember right, you're okay with solitary confinement. The fact that there are people locked down in a cell for 23 hours a day. What if I were to say, because your immorality in believing in solitary confinement is okay, I find you to be disqualified from being president. I already found her disqualifying to be president, which is why I didn't vote for her. And you can know exactly who I voted for in the video I posted on my channel. But this whole argument about immorality in government is really silly, and it's really triggering for me. For somebody who tries to think about what's right and wrong a lot, it's crazy to hear people in the U.S. government being the morality police when they are literally a part of the great Satan. All right, going here, J.S. Ventures. According to NBC poll, most Americans agree with mass deportations. It's over, right? Yeah, most Americans are very right-wing, as we see comment section all the time. We get guys like Seals, we get other right-wing lunatics who jump in here and they say the crazy stuff. Migrants back. Well, America can never have free health care. America can never pay for free education, but they have no commentary at all about the billions we pour into the military-industrial complex. You know what I'm saying? Most Americans are right-wing, conservative, reactionary, just like most of the world. Unfortunately. You would think, looking at the media, that everybody's kind of okay with gay people, trans people, people of different races and religions and stuff like that. But no, most people generally are kind of hateful, kind of bigoted, kind of closed-minded, and kind of xenophobic, and very much anti-Black racist. I'm sorry, I just had to go off on that rant about the immorality part. We're almost done with chapter 9. Let me read this last paragraph. So Kamala says, we live in an uncertain world, one filled with complexity and danger. The challenges we face in the future will be new and nuanced, and they will require us to mobilize based on being smart, not being afraid. There will be hard decisions to make, to be sure, of the kind that no previous generation has had. And yet it will serve us all well to remember what it was that helped us protect the American people and secure the peace in the generations leading up to this moment. We must remember that we are a nation of laws and that we stand for the rule of law. We must remember what we have worked and in some cases bled for, an international order that promotes peace and cooperation, a commitment to democracy here and around the world, a rejection of despots and tyrants and dictators who rule their countries based on their self-interest alone, not the interest of the people they are meant to serve. Imperfect though we have been, ours is a history of pursuit of a better, safer, freer world. In the years to come, with all the challenges to come, we cannot lose sight of who we are and who we can be. All right, that's the end of chapter 9. Talking about security, number one, I'm not that type of person that's going to be amped up about, American security, because I believe our obsession with security shows some of our, how can I say this? Our obsession with weapons and defense, right? We're the country with the most guns, most tanks, most aircraft carriers, most nuclear weapons, second behind Russia. Technically, we have the most nuclear weapons. Don't let anybody ever say Russia has the most nuclear weapons. A lot of nuclear weapons are defunct, and nobody technically knows how many nuclear weapons Russia has. Okay, it's been rumored that they could have even given the nuclear weapons to North Korea and stuff like that. Okay. So Nelson Moreno says, Simon, can I leave a movie recommendation before I go? Of course. Drop it in the chat. Absolutely drop it in the chat. We might watch it later. Definitely, we're going to be watching some movies this weekend. So be on the lookout for some Simon and Acting movie reviews. But yeah, I'm just not hyped up on national security issues. It's not a big deal. I feel like we do too much for national security, spend too much on it, and the psychosis of us focusing on national security makes us act irrational. Anyway, I'm going to finish up with the last chapter. So chapter 10. Early in my career, one of the first cases I tried was the hit and run case in Judge Jeffrey Horner's Oakland courtroom. To illustrate my argument, I had printed out a map on a large sheet of paper, which I pinned to an easel with butterfly clips. I needed the map so that I could show the jury the driver's path. I don't remember all the details of the case, but I do remember this map because I kept stumbling over north, south, east, and west. To acknowledge my own gaps at some point in the proceedings, I cracked a self-deprecating joke before the jury. Not long after, during a break, Judge Horner called me into his chamber. Don't you ever do that again, he said. You figure it out. Figure it out. His words stuck with me, along with so many lessons I've absorbed along the way. Foundational wisdom from my mother, encouragement and guidance from my family members, friends and trusted mentors, and the powerful examples I've witnessed, both good and bad, that have shaped my understanding of what it takes to lead effectively, what it takes to achieve one's objectives, and what we owe to one another in the process. Nelson Moreno says, Silence by Martin Scorsese. Oh, hell. Another racist-ass Scorsese film. Y'all saw how I felt about Taxi Driver. That's why Nelson said, can I leave this? He knew I was about to go off. He knew I was going to say something about this goddamn Martin Scorsese film. I guess I'll give Scorsese another try, but Taxi Driver really pissed me off. I thought you were going to say Megalopolis, though. I thought you were going to say Coppola's Megalopolis. Because everybody's ripping apart Megalopolis. And low-key, I want to see it for how bad it is. And I kind of want to see Joker Part 2 to see how bad it is, too. I want to watch all the bad movies. Okay. All right. I enjoyed the book. Tough. It feels shallow and even autistic. Okay. We're going to watch it. Silence by Martin Scorsese. We'll check it out. We rock with Scorsese. Yeah. Wait, who did... Scorsese didn't do Taxi Driver. I'm dumb as hell. Who did Taxi Driver? Was that Coppola? Taxi Driver director. Yeah, that was Scorsese. Yeah, that was Scorsese. Yes, it was. Racist ass Scorsese. All right, but yeah. I'm going to watch Joker 2 right now. Yeah, let me know how bad it is. We're gonna review Joker 2. I want to see all the bad movies this year. I gotta see Joker 2. And I gotta see Megalopolis by Coppola. I gotta see it. I want to see the fuckery. Okay. But anyway, y'all be easy. I'm gonna keep on reading this. We're gonna finish up chapter right here. Let's go. So these lessons have been informed by my own life experience and leavened by their application over the course of my career. Today they find expression in a series of brief phrases. Ones neighbors hear so often they'll probably laugh when they read this chapter. One year, my team even had blue stress balls made with no false choices emblazoned in white letters. Of course, it is impossible to reduce the complexity of leadership to simple slogans, but my team and I rely on these mantras as touchstones and guideposts, as starting points for policy conversations, and as ways to determine whether we're on the right track. I'm sharing them here because they say a lot about my personal philosophy and style, and maybe they will help to shape your thinking in some way, as the wisdom learned by other people has helped shape mine. Test the hypotheses. When I was a kid, I used to accompany my mother to the lab where she'd give me jobs to do, cleaning test tubes. Mainly, I think she probably knew early on that I was going to follow her into the sciences. It was the humanities and the arts that spoke to me, even as I was in awe of my mother and her colleagues and their work. But when you're the daughter of a scientist, science has a way of shaping used to talk to Maya and me about the scientific method as if it were a way of life. When I'd ask her why something was the way it was, she wasn't content to just give me the answer. She wanted me to formulate my own hypothesis, to use that as a starting point for further investigation, and to challenge my assumptions. This was how she did her work in the lab. The experiments she ran each day were aimed at figuring out whether her ideas would stand after being tested. It was about kicking the tires. She would collect and analyze the data and draw conclusions from that evidence. If the results didn't support the hypothesis, she would reevaluate. Innovation is the pursuit of what can be, unburdened by what has been. And we pursue innovation not because we're bored, but because we want to make things faster, more efficient, more effective, more accurate. By the way, a lot of people clown Kamala because she says the line, the unburdened by what has been, the pursuit of what can be. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that phrase. She might say it a lot, but everybody says something a lot. Like I say, you feel me? I say that all the time. In science and medicine and technology, we embrace the culture of innovation, hypothesis, experiments, and all. We expect mistakes. We just don't want to make the same mistake twice. We expect imperfections. It's basic for us. We've gotten used to the idea that software will need to be tweaked and updated. We don't have any problem with the concept of bug fixes and upgrades. We know that the more we test something, the clearer we'll understand what works and what doesn't, and the better the final product or process will be. In the realm of public policy, we seem to have trouble embracing innovation. That's in part because when you're running for public office and you stand before the voters, you aren't expected to have a hypothesis. You're expected to have the plan. The problem is when you roll out any innovation, new policy, or plan for the first time, there are likely to be glitches. And because you're in the public eye, those glitches are likely to end up on the front page in bold lettering. When the healthcare.gov website crashed 2 hours after it launched in 2013, the problem, though temporary, became a stand-in for scrapping the entire pursuit of affordable healthcare coverage as followed. The point is, when you are in public office, there really is a lot of risk associated with pursuing bold actions. Even so, I believe it is our obligation to do so. It is inherent in the oaths we take. The point of being a public official is to find solutions to problems, especially the most intractable, and to have a vision for the future. I've always said that political capital doesn't gain interest. You have to spend it and be willing to take the hit. You have to be willing to test your hypothesis and find out if your solution works based on metrics and data. Find adherence to tradition should not be the measure of success. I wish she could apply that to her policy on thinking about Israel and Gaza. Blind adherence to tradition. This is what it seems like. J.S. Venture says Kamala sounds weird. She does sound weird, right? This is the neoliberal postmodern politician. This is the politician without any sort of ideology. There's no ideology other than how do we maintain the system for what it is, to just continue to perpetuate it, rather than reach some higher goal. Because in the minds of the liberals, all the big battles have been won. The fight for human rights and civil rights have been won after World War II and the civil rights movement, of course. The fight against any competing ideology, against far left-wing economic policies, was won when the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union dissolved, right? Technically, maybe in the minds of the liberal at this stage, religious fanaticism has been defeated with the destruction of ISIS and the decline in Islamic radical terrorism. So in the minds of the liberal politicians, the postmodern liberal politicians like Kamala, there is no other ideology that they can cling to or combat their ideas against. So it's just to replicate the system, replicate it, continue to perpetuate it into existence ad nauseum, right? And maintain the status quo at all costs. All right, continuing here. Michael Tubbs, the mayor of Stockton, California, understands this idea better than just about anyone I know. He became mayor at 26 of a city that has been hammered by the foreclosure crisis and forced into bankruptcy. His city still contends with high poverty and crime and now rising rents. Tubbs asked a team of researchers to identify novel ways he could fight poverty, and one of the ideas they came back with was a guaranteed income program. The concept is that giving people direct cash payments can help them make ends meet while giving the economy a boost. And that was a hypothesis he was willing to test. The city is putting together a pilot program beginning in February 2019 in which it will give a rate 100 residents $500 a month for 18 months to spend however they want. Researchers will check in with the participants regularly during the program. At the end of that time, the city will have a trove of data that will help the mayor and countless political leaders determine the effectiveness of such a model. I have to say this. After reading Kamala's book, I have a lot of criticism for her. And I don't like her more and I don't like her any less. It's kind of the same. But one thing that I am kind of interested in her is her feelings about UBI. Because throughout this text, throughout this book, she's been hinting and sprinkling ideas here about guaranteed monthly payments for citizens, which I wholeheartedly believe in. America absolutely could do this. So it would absolutely be amazing if America did give $500 monthly checks to every family, every citizen, however they wanted to do it. Just give us the money. Give us the money, because America can do it. We deserve our dividends for being citizens, a part of the capitalist system, right? Let us in. Let me in now. Let me in now. All right, Chance Venture says, I feel that Bernie would at least make an interesting critique of neoliberalism. Kamala is a cliche. I stand for the weak. Facts. Facts. I would like to read Bernie's book, but Bernie isn't in the race. And after this book reacts, which we're finishing today, we are literally about to finish this book right now. So I want to shout out everybody. This has been a hard one, a long road. If you're here with me right now, this is a legendary moment, because every time I finish one of these books, it's here to inspire you. This isn't for me. It's here to inspire you out there. Pick up a book, read, challenge yourself. Have no excuses for anything you want to do in life. Don't say I don't have time to do it. Don't say I don't have the energy to do it. Don't say I have the motivation to do it. Pick up that book and read. One thing I wanted to do this year is I wanted to read 10 books. So far, we've read 5 this year. Most Americans, most people in this world don't read one. And for years, most Americans, most people go years without reading an entire book from beginning to end. The purpose of the Book React series is to motivate all of y'all. And even though it's not easy, even though hell, sometimes I literally do not have the time to read these books on live stream, I still make time to do it and come on here live with y'all to learn and educate myself. But anyway, yeah, Bernie, I would have read his book. I would like to read his book, but after this, we're probably going to be reading more books related to me going to university. So we're going to be reading some sociology books, philosophy books, psychology books, that sort of stuff, rather than books related to the election and stuff like that. Plus, the election is almost over. Anyway, continuing here. Another much discussed idea for helping the American workforce is to create a jobs guarantee program. Rather than guarantee a base cash payment, a federal jobs guarantee could ensure that anyone who wants to work will have a good paying job with dignity. It's an idea straight out of President Franklin Roosevelt's Economic Bill of Rights. Is it possible? Would it work? If it's part of the plan you're running on, you're compelled to say yes. But the better answer is, let's find out. I signed on to legislation in the Senate to create a model program that will help us do just that. One way or the other, I am confident that the data that comes from such a program will inform our approach. Yes, yes, yes. See, when Kamala starts talking about a guaranteed jobs program or guaranteed basic income for everybody, I get horny as fuck. That bitch get me rock hard. That bitch so goddamn sexy when she start talking about guaranteed jobs, guaranteed money, guaranteed universal health care, guaranteed universal education. When she start talking that shit, bitch, I love her. Bitch, I would wife this hoe. You feel me? You feel me? Doug don't know what I'll take your bitch. Doug, I will take your broad for real, for real. Because when Kamala start talking about guaranteed jobs, guaranteed income, that shit's sexy as fuck. For real. But she only does that stuff for like 1 second. And then it's back to neoliberal sameness. And plus she a big ass tease. She a big ass tease with that big ass booty and them big ass titties. Because she'd say, yeah, guaranteed jobs. We could do it, but let's find out. Bitch, stop playing with me. Bitch, stop playing with me. I want to fuck. You get what I'm saying? I hate when she do that shit. It's so annoying. But it's so real though. This is the thing. There's a lot in this book. There's a lot in this book that makes me think Comrade Kamala is in there. She just got to open the closet door and step on out. Kamala, I know you're not a commie. Your daddy was Marxist-ish, not a Marxist. He was a Marx-ish. But you just need to come on out, girl. Come on out and join this side. Join the red side. Join the real side. Don't be on that neoliberal bullshit. You feel me? You from the Bay Area. You a real black woman from the Bay Area. Not no nigga from who was getting chased around by Mexicans. You feel me? Come on out, Kamala. Let's get them guaranteed jobs. Let's get that UBI popping. Let's open up this Harvard. Let's end Harvard's endowment. Let's fucking nationalize the banks. Let's do all that gangster shit. You feel me? Anyway, uh, go to the scene. There's a small community in Southern California called Mira Loma that sits just north of the Santa Ana River at the western edge of Riverside County. It was, for a long time, a rural community, a place of grape vineyards and dairy farms, a place where people love to ride horses and to raise the children away from the smog of industrial Los Angeles. But in the late 1980s, things started to change. The rise of globalization meant that the United States would start importing a lot of more goods from around the world, and many of those shipping containers from Asia were ending up as Southern California harbors. So nearby Riverside County started approving huge warehouse projects and distribution centers into which trucks would drop off the cargo they picked up at the docks. By the time I was Attorney General, there were approximately 90 such mega complexes in Mira Loma. All right, JS Venture says, share Kamala with the homies. You get the chest, I get the thighs. Hey, yeah, we running Trisman. We running Trisman on Kamala, on Comrade Kamala. Oh man, continuing here. So life was transformed for the 4,500 families living in Mira Loma. Farms were dug up and paved over. Traffic became unbearable. The quiet rural community was swallowed up by an industrial warehousing district, and the air turned toxic. Every day, trucks made more than 15,000 trips on Mira Loma's main roads, bringing with them soot and other particulate matter. Soon, Mira Loma had one of the highest rates of diesel pollution in the state, well beyond state and federal air quality standards. Researchers at the University of Southern California conducted a study that found that pollution was linked to poor lung development and other serious illnesses in Mira Loma children. The Federal Environmental Protection Agency had already expressed its own concerns about health dangers associated with such filthy air. But things were only getting worse. The circumstances of Mira Loma were brought to my attention when I learned that the county had approved another complex of warehouses, which would facilitate another 1,500 truck trips through Mira Loma every day. Residents sued to stop it, arguing that the county had failed to take the health concerns seriously and hadn't done the work to mitigate the harm this would cause to a population already experiencing dangerous health impacts. They argued that the county had failed to follow state standards meant to protect communities like theirs. After reviewing the documents, I agreed. I wanted to join the lawsuit. I told my team, let's show those families the state has their back. That could have been the end of it. I was confident that with state resources behind them, the community would have what it needed to prevail. But taking action wasn't enough. Understanding the circumstances strictly through the lens of briefing documents and discussions with lawyers wasn't enough. I wanted to go to the scene. As we approached Mira Loma, I could see a towering mass of haze and smog enveloping the community and the surrounding areas. The sun shone through, but with a gray, refracted tint as the toxic clouds settled in. When I got out of the car, the pollution stung my eyes. I could taste it in the air. I could wipe the dust and the soot off surfaces with my fingers. I went into a small meeting room where members of the community had gathered to tell me their stories. One person told me that every day when the wind changes, he starts breathing the fumes. Another told me that it's not safe for the children to play outside. More than half of the households had children under 18, and they were stuck indoors. A soft-spoken woman told me that she was glad I was there because they had been fighting for a long time and no one ever seemed to listen. One man told me that they have to wash the soot off their driveways and clean the clothesline before they hang any clothes. I was worried about the trees in his backyard, which had stopped bearing fruit and were dying, and he expressed his concern for people in the community who are suffering from higher rates of cancer, asthma, and heart disease. At first, that was all he said. But when the microphone came back to him, the group encouraged him to tell the more personal story that had brought him to the meeting. It's hard for me to talk about it, but I mean, I'll do it to help this community. Through tears, he began. I had a daughter, and she died before she was 15 years old. And instead of planning for her 15th birthday, I was planning for her funeral. She died of lung cancer. Sometimes it's hard for me to talk about it, but if this can help, I'm just telling my story. Go in here. Greg Mack said something, but then he retracted it. I don't know what he said. Anyway, it did help. The fight against the country would take place in courtrooms and conference rooms, and we would not just be the voice, but the vessel through which the community story would be told. To really understand the pain that a community is coping with, it's not enough to imagine what it must be like. Smart policies cannot be created in an ivory tower, and arguments aren't won by facts alone. What matters, just as much as is being there whenever possible in person, ears and eyes wide open, talking to the folks living closest to the challenge. It mattered that we were there to hear this anguished father story and the stories of other families in Mira Loma. Going to Greg Mac. What up, Simon? What's the plan for the weekend? Just chilling here in beautiful Budapest, and chilling with the wife, watching movies, doing movie reviews. You got a film you want us to review? Put it in the chat. I got homework too. Going to university, I got a lot of homework to catch up on, and I'm trying to finish up this book so I can have more time for my studies. You feel me? Anyway, continuing here. So it mattered when I visited soldiers in Iraq who were waiting for their next mission and sailors in San Diego preparing to deploy for months on a nuclear submarine. It is one thing to talk about the needs of the military and intelligence communities in a Senate hearing room. It is another to go to the scene and make real in-person connections with the men and women who are serving. I spent a good deal of time with the troops. I talked about their specialties and their training, about the challenges of their work, and how a combination of bravery and duty had led them to this life. But we talked about other things too, what they missed, what they feared, what they had left behind, their sacrifice. Their families had a view of what life was like for the people trapped there. 70% of them, women and children. We drove around the encampment, which seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions, each makeshift dwelling representing a family that had fled war and slaughter. I insisted that we get out of the cars. We walked down a street they had nicknamed the Champs-Élysées after the famous shopping street in Paris, and we admired the stalls of clothes and food. At one point, 3 kids ran up and started talking to me. One of them, a 10-year-old in a blue soccer shirt, took a real liking to me. We took a selfie together, and then he asked through interpreters if I would come meet his family. I said, of course, and I followed him through the camp to where they were living. When I got there, a large extended family was there to greet me. They had 2 small dwellings between them, and that created a little courtyard between the two, and a board as an overhang. His grandparents were there, the matriarch and the patriarch of the family, and they were incredibly welcoming when I arrived. Will you stay for tea? The grandfather asked me. I'd be honored, I replied. The grandmother went behind the huts where there was a water spigot and a small gas camp stove. The next thing I knew, she was back, bearing a tray with beautiful glasses, a plate of sweets, and a teapot. We were all sitting cross-legged, drinking our tea. I was ready to ask all about them, the story of how they got there, the experience of living in the refugee camp, when the grandfather started to speak. Okay, I've invited you into my home. I've given you tea. I fed you. Now tell me, who are you? All right, and this is the point where Kamala becomes Muslim. If any of y'all don't know, she's not black. She's an Indian Muslim terrorist. She is a big titty terrorist. This light skin, this light bright, is really working for Al Qaeda. She's the red bone sent by Al Qaeda to destroy America. Y'all didn't know that? That's why she went to Syria. Y'all didn't know that, huh? Anyway. Continuing here, embrace the mundane. Bill Gates is obsessed with fertilizer. That's a funny way. That's saying Bill Gates is on some shit. I got sorry. I'm tripping up, man. I'm tripping up, but I'm happy we're about to finish this book. Let's go. Bill Gates is obsessed with fertilizer. I go to meetings where it's a serious topic of conversation, he writes. I read books about its benefits and the problems with overusing it. It's the kind of topic I have to remind myself not to talk about too much at cocktail parties, since most people don't find it as interesting as I do. Why the fascination? He explains that 40% of people on Earth owe their lives to higher crop outputs that were made possible only because of fertilizer. It was the literal fuel for the Green Revolution, which helped lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. What Gates understands is that there is a big difference between announcing a plan to end world hunger and actually ending it. And closing the gap depends on seemingly mundane details like fertilizer and weather patterns and the height of wheat. Politics is a realm where the grand pronouncement often takes the place of the painstaking and detail-oriented work of getting meaningful things done. This isn't to say that there's anything inherently wrong with grand pronouncements. Good leadership requires vision and aspiration. It requires the articulation of bold ideas that move people to action. But it is often the mastery of the seemingly unimportant details, the careful execution of the tedious tasks, and the dedicated work done outside of the public eye that makes the changes we seek possible. Embracing the mundane also means making sure that our solutions actually work for the people who need them. When I was Attorney General of California, for example, and I went after the for-profit Corinthian colleges, I was concerned about what would happen to students who had been defrauded. The students had the right to transfer to another school, get their loan discharged, or get their money back, but the paperwork involved was quite complicated. Most students had no idea how to begin or even that they had these options in the first place. We had prevailed in the case, but the students wouldn't actually receive the benefits of the financial relief unless they could navigate the bureaucracy. So my office created a website that walked students step by step through this complex process. I wanted to make it as simple as possible for someone to exercise their rights and get actual relief. As we were developing the website, I'd often have our team show it to me, and I'd literally click through the process myself. More than once, I hit a snag. I'd tell them, if I don't understand it, how will the students? That meant the team had to rework the interface and the text. But as frustrating as the exercise might have been, it resulted in a better product. Taking the time to perfect the details made the tool more relevant to the students who needed it. My point is, you have to sweat the small stuff because sometimes it turns out that the small stuff is actually the big stuff. I read a story once about a principal at a St. Louis elementary school who wanted to take on rampant truancy in her school. When she talked to parents, she realized that many of the kids didn't have clean clothes. Either they didn't have access to washing machines, or their families couldn't afford detergent, or the power had been shut off. Students were embarrassed to show up at school in dirty clothes. I think people don't talk about not having clean clothes because it makes you want to cry or go home or run away or something, a student explained. It doesn't feel good. So the principal had a washer and dryer installed at her school, and she invited students who had missed more than 10 days of class to do their laundry on campus. According to CityLab, in the first year of the initiative, more than 90% of the students they tracked boosted their attendance. Words matter. Words have the ability to empower and to deceive, the power to soothe and to hurt. They can spread important ideas and wrong-headed ones. They can spur people to action for good or ill. Words are incredibly powerful, and people in power whose words can carry furthest and fastest have an obligation, a duty to speak them with precision and wisdom. Scripture tells us the one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even more tempered. This is something I wholeheartedly believe in. This is why I write on my channel and publish my writings. This is why I read on my channel, and hopefully y'all read with me, because words are the most dangerous thing on the planet. I repeat, if you're listening to me right now, if you get nothing from this live stream, remember this: words move mountains. Words make life and death. Words bring everything into existence. And if you think about that and reflect on that deeply enough, you will find that to be the truth. In Islam, what did they say? What did they say? The angel Jibril, what is the first thing he told Muhammad? Iqra, which is read. What did they say? The word of God is. What did they call God? God comes alive in the word. God comes alive in the word, in the Bible, as how they talk about God. God cannot exist without the word, as they say in the Bible. The words matter. Words absolutely matter. Words absolutely matter. The ink of a scholar is worth more than the blood of 1,000 martyrs. Remember that. If you get nothing from this live stream, just remember that. Anyway, continuing here. I'm keenly aware of the potential power that lives in my words. I am keenly aware of the potential power that lives in my words. As someone who represents nearly 40 million people who seeks to give voice to the voiceless. And so when I speak, I do so with the knowledge that the words I choose matter. First, what we call things and how we define them shapes how people think about them. Too often, words are used to degrade our impressions of issues or of one another. It's why I insisted on better terminology in my work with sexually exploited youth. It was not right to refer to these individuals individuals as teen prostitutes, quote unquote. They were young people who were being exploited and preyed upon by adults. When I was Attorney General, I prosecuted a case against a man who had started a website called YouGotPosted.com, which invited people to upload sexually explicit content featuring their former sexual partners. Absolutely gross. Who would do that? That's wild behavior. The man who ran the website would then demand payment from those who had been exploited in exchange for removing the images. In the press and in common parlance, the act of posting the images was described as revenge porn. In my office, people shorthanded the case as the revenge porn case. I wasn't having any of that. Revenge is something you inflict on someone who has wronged you. These people hadn't wronged their perpetrators. It wasn't revenge, nor was it pornography. The victims had never intended for the images to be publicly displayed. It was internet-based extortion, plain and simple. So we referred to it as cyber exploitation. I directed my team that we were not to use the term revenge porn. I encouraged the media not to use the term either, and I did so for one fundamental reason: words matter. Second, I choose to speak truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it leaves people feeling uneasy. When you speak truth, people won't always walk away feeling good. And sometimes you won't feel so great about the reaction you receive. But at least all parties will walk away knowing it was an honest conversation. That is not to say that all truth is uncomfortable or that the intention is to cause discomfort. Many truths are incredibly hopeful. I am simply saying that the job of an elected official is not to sing a lullaby and soothe the country into a sense of complacency. The job is to speak truth, even in a moment that does not welcome or invite its utterance. Show the math. Many of us remember taking math tests in grade school where it wasn't enough to simply answer a question. You had to show your work. That way, your teacher could see how your logic unfolded step by step. If you got the solution right, the teacher would know that you hadn't just made a lucky guess. And if you got it wrong, she could see exactly where and why and help you correct your mistake. Showing the math is an approach that I've embraced throughout my career. In part, it's a methodology that helps me and my team test the logic of our own proposals and solutions. When we force ourselves to lay out our assumptions, we often find that there are certain parts of our arguments that assume things they shouldn't. So we go back and revisit them. We revise them. We dive deeper so that when we are ready to put forth a proposal, we can be confident in its soundness. At the same time, I think leaders who are asking for the public's trust have a responsibility to show the math too. We can't make other people's decisions for them, but we have to be able to show how we reached ours. That's why when I taught young lawyers how to put together a closing argument, I will remind them that it wasn't enough to get up in front of the jury and just tell them, you must find 8. The job was to get up there and show the jury that 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 leads categorically to 8. I tell them to break down every element, explain the logic of their argument, show the jury how they reach their conclusion. When you show people the math, you give them the tools to decide whether they agree with the solution. And even if they don't agree with everything, they may find that they agree with you most of the way. A kind of policy-making partial credit that can form the basis for constructive collaboration. But unfortunately, in America, people don't even care about the math. People don't care about doing the math. They don't care about following any sort of logical reasoning. That's why you have people here even debating if this woman is black or not. Makes no sense. All right. No one should have to fight alone. In the spring of 1966, Cesar Chavez led a 340-mile march of Latinx and Filipino farm workers from California's Central Valley to its state capital in an effort to spur action and direct the country's eyes at the unconscionable ways that farm workers were being treated. That summer, the United Farm Workers was formed, and under Chavez's leadership, it would become one of the most important civil rights and labor rights organizations in the country. At the same time, 2,000 miles away, Martin Luther King Jr. was leading the Chicago Freedom Movement. Through speeches and rallies and marches and meetings, he demanded everything from the ending of housing discrimination to the need for high-quality education for all. In September 1966, King sent Chavez a telegram. He wrote about the many fronts on which the battle for equality must be fought. In the urban slums and the sweatshops of the factories and fields, our separate struggles are really a struggle for freedom, for dignity, and for humanity. That is the sentiment I believe we all must embrace. There are so many ongoing struggles in this country against racism and sexism, against discrimination based on religion, national origin, sexual orientation. Each of these struggles is unique. Each deserves its own attention and effort, and it would be wrong to suggest that the differences don't matter or that one solution or one fight will alone solve them all. But at the same time, we should embrace the point that King made to Chavez. That's what these struggles have in common is the pursuit of freedom, of basic human dignity. Black Lives Matter can't just be a rallying call for Black people, but a banner under which all decent people will stand. The Me Too movement cannot make lasting structural changes for women in the workplace unless the effort is joined by men. Victories by one group can lead to victories for others in the courts and in society as a whole. None of us should have to fight alone. But what really happens is Black Americans end up fighting alone. We make the advancements for people to be counted as citizens from birth, and now we have Indians born in America saying stay away from the collar. We're the ones who are fighting for the ending of quotas to immigrants coming into the nation so that America can't just continue to whiten the country and have reinforcements of white supremacy by only allowing white Europeans to immigrate to America. So we open the doors for the Africans and the Caribbeans to come, and then we get the Nigerians who are born in America saying stay away from the Akata. We're the ones who continue to champion and fight for human rights for all people around the world. We're the ones that have the Muhammad Alis that say no Vietnamese called me nigger, and saying that I'm not going to go fight in Asia to kill a bunch of people who have never oppressed me here while we're getting lynched in America. Meanwhile, you got Vietnamese people growing up in America saying fuck you nigga. That's the thing. So while Kamala has this view that's really, really triggering for me that a lot of liberals have that say a lifting tide rises all boats. No, what really happens is Black people are under the sea, raising the boat like Poseidon, and everybody else benefits. That's really what it is. And by Black people, I mean Black Americans. Continuing here. And if we are lucky enough to be in a position of power, if our voice and our actions can mobilize change, don't we have a special obligation? Being an ally can't just be about nodding when someone says something we agree with, important as that is. It's must also be about action. It's our job to stand up for those who are not at the table where life-altering decisions are made, not just those who look like us, not just those who need what we need, not just those who have gained an audience with us. Our duty is to improve the human condition in every way we can for everyone who needs it. All right. JS Venture says, Me Too mostly benefited rich and famous white women. Ain't that a fact, too? Ain't that a fact? And who started Me Too? Black women. There was a Black woman named Tarana Burke who was talking about all the sexual abuse that she went through and other Black women and poor women were going through. And now Me Too has been co-opted by the white feminists to just go after their bosses that they slept with willingly, that they ended up not getting promoted. And their bosses didn't end up leaving their wives. Shocker. Continuing here. If it's worth fighting for, it's a fight worth having. On Monday, I stood in front of your office. A protester named Ana Maria Archila exclaimed to Republican Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona as he got into an elevator. I told the story of my sexual assault. I told it because I recognized in Dr. Ford's story that she is telling the truth. What you are doing is allowing someone who has actually violated a woman to sit on the Supreme Court. This is not tolerable. As she spoke, Senator Flake nodded his head but didn't make eye contact. Then another survivor, Maria Gallagher, spoke up. I was sexually assaulted and nobody believed me. I didn't tell anyone, and you're telling all women that they don't matter, that they should just stay quiet because if they tell you what happened to them, you are going to ignore them. That's what happened to me. That's what you're telling all women in America, that they don't matter. Senator Flake continued to avoid the woman's gaze. Look at me when I'm talking to you, she said, her voice breaking. You are telling me that my assault doesn't matter, that what happened to me doesn't matter, and that you're going to let people who do these things into power. That's what you're telling me when you vote for him. Don't look away from me. The elevators closed, and Senator Flake made his way to the room where the Judiciary Committee was holding a vote for the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh. I had been appointed to the Judiciary Committee 10 months earlier and had expected at some point to be part of a Supreme Court confirmation process. But when Anthony Kennedy announced his retirement on June 27, 2018, I counted myself among the millions of people who were stunned and dismayed, especially when we learned that Judge Kavanaugh had been chosen to replace him. Before we knew the name Christine Blasey Ford, we knew from Judge Kavanaugh's public statements, his writings, and his judicial record that he was hostile to civil rights and voting rights and reproductive rights. We knew he would be a reliable vote against unions, against the environment, against corporate regulation. We knew before his first set of confirmation hearings that there was something in his past, that Judge Kavanaugh and the White House were trying to hide. We knew it because 90% of Judge Kavanaugh's record was withheld from members of the Judiciary Committee. We knew that those first hearings that Brett Kavanaugh had misled the Senate under oath about his involvement with stolen documents, about his work with controversial judicial nominees, about his role in Bush-era warrantless wiretapping. We knew all of this first, and then we learned her name, and then we learned her story. We learned that when she was in high school, Christine Blasey Ford had gone to a gathering at a house with several people, where Brett Kavanaugh had forced himself on top of her, had grinded against her, and had groped her while trying to take off her clothes. We learned that when she tried to scream, he had put his hand over her mouth, that she believed he was going to rape her, that she feared he might inadvertently kill her. I was able to get up and run out of the room. Dr. Ford explained as she testified under oath in front of the Judiciary Committee about the attack. Directly across from the bedroom was a small bathroom. I ran inside the bathroom and locked the door. I heard Brett and Mark leave the bedroom, laughing, and loudly walk down the narrow stairs, pinballing off the walls on the way down. I waited, and when I did not hear them come back up the stairs, I left the bathroom, ran down the stairs through the living room, and left the house, she continued. I remember being on the streets and feeling an enormous sense of relief that I had escaped from the house and that Brett and Mark were not coming after me. I watched her in such awe as she told her story. In front of Dr. Ford sat all 21 members of the Senate Judiciary Committee looking down from raised dais. Behind her sat an audience of many strangers. To her left was Rachel Mitchell, an Arizona prosecutor who would question Dr. Ford instead of the Republican committee members, all men who apparently doubted their own ability to question her. I'm always surprised how women are the attack dogs for men when protecting patriarchy. Anyway, there were bodyguards in the room, too, whose protection Dr. Ford now needed. And of course, there were the cameras broadcasting every moment, every movement, every word spoken, and a tear shed in front of a national audience. This was no place for a person to have to talk about. There she was in front of us and the world, even after death threats, even after having to leave her home, even after countless vile attacks hurled at her online. Christine Blasey Ford came to Washington out of a sense of what she called her civic duty and testified in one of the most extraordinary displays of courage I have seen in my lifetime. Then Judge Kavanaugh responded, "This whole 2 weeks effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit," Kavanaugh railed at the committee, "fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, fear that has been unfairly stoked about my judicial record, revenge on behalf of the Clintons, and millions of dollars in money from outside left-wing opposition groups." Fuming, he declared, the behavior of several of the Democratic members of this committee at the hearing a few weeks ago was an embarrassment. He went on for 45 minutes, and that was just his opening statement. "I like beer. I like beer," Kavanaugh said in a response to a question from Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, a Democrat from Rhode Island. "I don't know if you do. Do you like beer, Senator, or not? What do you like to drink, Senator? What do you like to drink?" White men continue to be mediocre and continue to fail upwards. Crazy. Imagine a black man going up there in front of the Senate, getting confirmed to be a Supreme Court justice, and he is being questioned about sexually assaulting a woman. And then somebody asks him a question, and they say, "Hey, did you drink a little bit too much when you were in college?" He said, "I like beer. I like beer." Imagine a nigga going up there saying, "I like Henny. I like Henny. I drink a lot of Henny." You get what it makes no sense. White people can be just mediocre and fail upwards in America. Absolutely astounding. Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, also a Democrat, asked, "So you're saying there's never been a case where you drank so much that you didn't remember what happened the night before or part of what happened? You're asking about, blackout," he said with visible frustration. "I don't know. Have you? Could you answer the question, Judge? That's not happened. Is that your answer?" "Yeah," he said smugly. "And I'm curious if you have." "I have no drinking problem, Judge," she said, not moments after having described how alcoholism had deeply affected her father. Yeah, nor do I, he retorted. It was, if anything, a revealing moment from a man who had sworn up and down that he always treats women with respect. Near the end of the hearing, it was my turn to question the witness. As everyone was aware, Dr. Ford had taken and passed a polygraph examination. She had called for outside witnesses and expert witnesses to testify. And most important, she had called for an FBI investigation. I asked Kavanaugh if he would do the same. He repeatedly evaded answering, just as he had done on many questions from my colleagues up to that point. The contrast between Dr. Ford's sincerity and Judge Kavanaugh's caginess was striking, as was his willingness to mislead the committee. He gave patently false statements about the meanings of certain terms he'd written in his high school yearbook. He downplayed key aspects of his drinking. He was dishonest about the kinds of gatherings he attended in high school, and that tempered Judge Kavanaugh's flagrant behavior was so outside the norms of judicial standards that in the days after the hearing, the American Bar Association reopened its evaluation of him, and more than 2,400 academics signed an open letter to the Senate saying they were united as professors of law and scholars of judicial institutions in believing that he did not display the impartiality and judicial temperament prerequisite to sit on the highest court of our land. And yet, from the moment the hearing was over, it seemed the Republican caucus was ready and eager to move on, and that despite Kavanaugh's performance and despite Dr. Ford's testimony, the committee would push forward with the vote. Shortly after Judge Kavanaugh's finished testifying on Thursday night, Republican leaders scheduled a committee vote on his nomination for Friday morning. There are many reasons why survivors of sexual assault don't report, and one is the fear or assumption that they will not be believed. I was calculating daily the risk/benefit for me of coming forward and wondering if I would just be jumping in front of a train that was going where it was going anyway. Dr. Ford had testified that morning, and that I would just be personally annihilated. As Republican senators pressed ahead, the fear seemed all too justified. Those senators were choosing not to believe Christine Blasey Ford, even though she had risked everything to warn them about what she knew, even though she had reached out before Judge Kavanaugh had even been nominated, even though she had no reason to lie. They chose not to believe Dr. Ford, even as they refused to do a real investigation, even though she had corroborating information that backed up her claims, even though Judge Kavanaugh had more than one accuser. For Judge Kavanaugh's defenders, the cost of believing her, the cost of the truth itself, was simply too high. This has been about raw power, I said in the next morning after leading a walkout of the committee hearing. You're seeing that on display in the hearing this morning. You're seeing that in the process from the beginning. This is a failure of this body to do what it has always said it is about, which is to be deliberative. When I returned to the chamber, there were rumblings. It appeared that Senator Flake had been affected by the survivors who'd stopped him in the elevator on the way to the hearing that morning. After consultation with Senator Chris Coons, a Democrat from Delaware, and others, Senator Flake called for a delay to the final vote so the FBI could be given a week to investigate further. It gave us an unexpected reprieve. We know now that the victory felt in that moment was fleeting, but that does not diminish its significance. Two survivors of sexual assault standing in front of an elevator seemed to change the mind of a senator whom most saw as an immovable, securing an FBI investigation and forcing a delay in an out-of-control process. In that moment, those two brave women were more powerful than all the Democratic senators in the Judiciary Committee. Together, they paused history. They gave us one last chance to prevail. But the White House had one more card to play. The administration limited the scope of the investigation, dictating whom the FBI could speak to, even preventing agents from following up with Dr. Ford and Judge Kavanaugh themselves. And yet, for key swing senators, the fact that they had been an investigation of any kind was enough. On October 6th, 2018, I stood on the Senate floor and watched as Judge Kavanaugh got confirmed. I have been writing these words in the days since, even as I finished this manuscript. Like many Americans, I am still processing what our country has just been through. But for now, I will say this: it would be a mistake to downplay the consequences of having Justice Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court. With this lifetime appointment, he will be in a position, along with the conservative majority on the Court, to end a woman's right to choose as we know it, to invalidate the Affordable Care Act, to undo the legal basis by which corporations are regulated, to unravel fundamental rights to vote, to marry, and to privacy. I worry about the ways his partnership and temperament will infect the courts, how it will color his decision making, how it will disadvantage so many who seek relief on the courts. I worry about what it will do to the court itself to have a man credibly accused of sexual assault among its justices. I worry about the message that has been sent yet again to Americans in the world, that in our country today, someone can rage, lash out, resist accountability, and still ascend to a position of extraordinary power over other people's lives. But here's what I am not worried about. I am not worried about our commitment to the fights for a better country. I am not worried about this experience. I'm not worried that this experience has diminished our will. We chose this fight not because we were sure we could win, but because we were sure it was right, because that should be all that matters. And I know it is no bromide of consolation to say what is certainly true, that even though we didn't prevail, this fight mattered. Dr. Ford did not come forward in vain. As Senator Patrick Leahy said of her decision to speak, bravery is contagious. The cameras and the microphones that Dr. Ford never sought carried her story and her message far beyond our committee room, inspiring women and men to tell the stories of their sexual assaults, many for the first time. On the day that Dr. Ford testified, the National Sexual Assault Hotline saw a 200% increase in calls. Women were calling into C-SPAN to share their stories, writing op-eds, telling their husbands and fathers they were speaking their truth, and in so doing, making plainer than ever the pervasiveness of sexual violence. These survivors took no pleasure in reliving their own pain. Many who came forward had no intention of seeking justice, much less an expectation of receiving it, but they spoke it. But they spoke out, like the survivors of Harvey Weinstein, Larry Nassar, and Bill Cosby, like survivors of abuse in the Catholic Church, to help ensure that this conversation will never again be limited to whispers. Sexual violence is real, it is wrong, it affects men as well as women, and no one should suffer in silence. The faces, the voices, the crowds who filled the hearing room and the Hart building and the streets outside the Supreme Court, the people who flooded social media with messages of solidarity and shared anguish, all command us to listen, to respect, to believe, and to act. Their voices, like Dr. Ford's, will have lasting reach. Indeed, though this battle is over, the scope of its impact is yet to be seen. History has shown that one person's willingness to stand up for what is right can be the spark that ignites far-reaching change. Anita Hill's testimony wasn't enough to keep Clarence Thomas off the Supreme Court in 1991, but it brought the term sexual harassment into the mainstream and started a national conversation. Less than that's the Civil Rights Act of 1991, which expanded the remedies available to victims of sexual harassment. The following year, Democratic women took the 1992 election by storm, doubling the number of women in the House and tripling the number of women in the Senate. This is the one thing about liberals and leftists that I really dislike, and I identify as a leftist. Leftists and liberals are okay with losing, and they keep on pointing out all the times they lost. Like, this is so annoying. She's pointing out that this woman came forward and said, hey, Kavanaugh raped me and he shouldn't be on the Supreme Court. And they almost didn't get Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court, but then the right wing did whatever they wanted to do anyway. But then the liberal picks himself up, in this case, picks herself up and says, well, you know what? We almost did it. The same thing here. She talks about Anita Hill, the woman that accused Clarence Thomas of putting a pubic hair on her Coca-Cola back in 1990, whatever, right? And then the liberal says, yeah, Anita Hill, she almost stopped Clarence Thomas. Almost. 40 years later, almost. He's still there, still hanging around, chilling. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's stupid. It's wild. It's wild. Yeah, same thing with the leftists, too. Leftists, we are obsessed with losing, and I can understand why a lot of people just are stupid, ignorant, redneck, conservative, reactionary nuts. You get what I'm saying? Because being on the right, you're not losing. You're always in a perpetual state of fear because the immigrants are coming, the black people are coming, the gays are coming. Everybody's coming to attack you, but you've never lost. You've never lost. Ask a conservative person what the Civil War was about, and they'll say it was about states' rights, therefore they didn't lose the fight about slavery. They just lost their slaves somehow fighting for their states' rights. The state rights to do what? They don't know. Same thing with the Nazis. They always say, oh, we never really lost. Just, Hitler sort of backed out, but the ideas are not done. Same thing. The right never feels like they lost because they can't acknowledge history at all. So I understand why a lot of people are on the right, because it just takes, you get a loser sort of mentality, which a lot of leftists and liberals have, which is being okay with losing and saying, oh, we almost got to the promised land. Anyway, I'll continue here. We're wrapping up this chapter. Anyway, I am not naive. I walk the city halls where one Republican senator told survivors of sexual assault to grow up, and where another described protesting survivors as a mob, even as the president he serves was inciting a crowd to humiliate Dr. Ford. I know, we all know that there are miles still to go before women are accorded the full respect and dignity we deserve. But I am heartened by the unprecedented numbers of women running for office and the many more who have been politically energized. I am heartened by the new bonds being forged across boundaries of race, age, background, experience, and gender as women and men stand shoulder to shoulder for justice and basic rights. This progress is a product of a movement that started before Anita Hill ever testified and will continue long after Dr. Ford becomes a hero in our children's history books. We will grow stronger through every effort. Even when we forget, we will draw wisdom from every chapter. Even when those lessons are hard, we will face what it is to come with conviction that change is possible, knowing that truth is like the sun, it always century says, those are you I am to me on X. You can just go. I don't and not on there. Just go to Laji Enrique and you can see the film review. And I put the links in there as well. Know exactly the name Acti picked it, but we also got a film request from Nelson Moreno as well. So it's probably going to be a film that Acti recommends, and Silence will be the two films for this weekend. Anyway, let's read this chapter. Yeah, we're almost done here. Only got 3 more pages. 3 more pages before we're done. Let's go. You may be the first. Don't be the last. I was in the middle of my first campaign for district attorney when I got a call from an old law school friend, Lisa, who was working as a career counselor at a nearby school. She had met a young Black woman named Venus Johnson, a second-year law student who had grown up in London, the child of an immigrant, with dreams of prosecute. Not surprisingly, when I shook Venus' hand, I could feel this incredible commonality. I could see myself in her. She was kind enough to spend the day around while I campaigned and ran errands. At one point, we ended up shopping for a wedding present for one of my dear friends. I had a wedding and drove past a friend had a sign for my opponents in the window. Come on, let's go, I told Venus as I grabbed one of my own signs out of the truck. We went in and shook hands with the store owner and asked him for his support. I have another kid sign in my window, he said, not sure what to make of me. That's okay, I told him. You can put mine in the window too. He agreed, and we were on our way. Over lunch, Venus and I talked about the reasons she wanted to be a prosecutor and the kind of work she had hoped to do. I learned that her father had a long career in law enforcement and that she had always imagined herself fighting on behalf of victims. I told her that I had taken a similar path and recommended she follow her instincts and join the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. I was happy. I told her to make some calls on her behalf. She seemed to wonder why I was doing this for her. I told her that it was something my mother used to say that I always held close. You may be the first, don't be the last. My mother had got where she was because of the help of mentors. I had got to where I was because of mentors too. And I intended to be a mentor to as many people as I could during the course of my career. All right. I consider leaving the white supremacist forum. I absolutely am, JS Ventures. I absolutely am. I've been considering switching the fan base. Fan base, I heard, like Twitter is Black owned and ran, and it has like the same thing as Spaces. This is the thing. I just want a place where I can record my Spaces and have live conversations with the people if they want to join and talk about the films. And I want to do it on a social media platform. So I think fan base might be where we'll do our movie reviews in the future, because Twitter is Nazis. Yes, I agree. Anyway, continuing here. Hold on one second. Let me take care of this. make sure I got a class. It might pop up. Please, knuckleheads pop up. Please do it. If any professor 10 pages. Anyway, he was after my first conversation with Venus. She got the job she'd been dreaming of in the Alameda County DA's office. She worked there for 8 years, and like me, she specialized in helping victims of sexual violence. We spoke regularly over those years. In 2014, she joined me in the Attorney General's office, and about 1 year into her working for me on legislative matters, I had a specific request for her. I called her into my office. I want you to be my associate attorney general and my de facto chief of staff. There was a pregnant pause. Me, she asked. Yes, you. I've had a lot of good fortune in my life, but I'm not sure I've ever felt as lucky as the moment she said yes. She was as wonderful at the job as I thought she would have been. As she would be. Sorry. Not she would have been. Sorry, I had to open up this Zoom reel here over here. All right. She was as wonderful as the job as I thought she would be. Okay, hold on one second. All right. As she would be. All right. In addition to keeping things moving, staffing me and being the last person in line to ensure that I was prepared for meetings and press conferences, she helped to manage a complex bureaucracy and lead major initiatives on my behalf as a legal and policy advisor. I couldn't have asked for a better member of the team. During those years, we spent a lot of time together. We've continued to speak since our time in the Attorney General's office, sometimes about her cases, sometimes about career moves she was considering, once about a recipe for a really amazing chicken broth. Venus was part of the inspiration for a speech I often give, especially in front of groups of young women. I like to induct them into what I call the Role Models Club. I tell them that whatever profession they choose, they've got to keep raising their hands to share and take credit for their good ideas and to know that they deserve to rise as high as they dare to climb. I also tell them that when they see others in need, they've got to go out of their way to lift them up. I tell them that sometimes members of the Role Models Club can feel alone. Sometimes they may think, do I have to carry this burden by myself? The fact that they will myself in rooms where no one else looks like me. And breaking barriers. When you break through a glass ceiling, you're going to get cuts. It's going to hurt. It's not without pain. But I ask them to look around at one another and hold that in their hearts and their souls. I tell them to when that's the thing, know that you got their back. I know this always has mine. I've seen a lot in my years of public service. What I've learned can't all be boiled down, but I've come away with the firm belief that people are fundamentally good, and that given the chance, they will usually reach out a hand to help their neighbor. I've learned through history and experience that not all progress is gradual or linear. Sometimes it simply goes from one plateau to another. Sometimes we fall back tragic. Sometimes we and achieve things beyond the realm of what we thought possible. I believe that our job is to provide the force propulsion that will get us to a higher plane. We have yet to achieve that union. Alongside the great achievements of the American experiment lies a dark history that we have to deal with in the present. In the face of powerful headwinds, it's easy to become tired, to become overwhelmed. We cannot give up. The beginning of our downfall comes when we stop aspiring. Let me speak one final truth. For all of our differences, for all the battles, for all the fights, we are still one American family. We have so more in common than what separates us. We need to paint a picture of the future where everyone can see themselves and everyone is seen. Vibrant portrait of a vibrant United States where everyone is treated with equal dignity and each of us has the opportunities to make the most of our lives. That is the vision we're fighting for, born out of love of country. It is an old fight, and what we know about it is this: one can be lost complacency. Battles can be won with new efforts. Every generation has to recommit to the work, to the effort, and to the true meaning of the word patriot. A patriot is not someone who condones the conduct of our country, whatever it does. It is someone who fights every day for the ideals of the country, whatever it takes. What I have seen, especially since becoming a United States Senator, is that this is a fight born out of optimism, too. I see hundreds of dreamers walking the halls of the Capitol who believe that if they are heard, they can make a difference, and they will. I see it in the parents who traveled from all over the country to Washington with their disabled children to show Congress the faces of those who would lose coverage if the Affordable Care Act was repealed. I see it in the women who fight every day for the right to make their own decisions about their bodies. I see Parkland survivors who fight and organize for gun safety and achieve significant victories that tell them a better future is possible. When I travel our country, I see that optimism in the eyes of 7 and 10-year-olds who feel a sense of purpose and being part of the fight. I see it and feel it in the energy of the people I meet. Yes, people are marching. Yes, people are shouting. They are doing it from a place of optimism. That's why they adopted Big Swim. That's why my parents took me in a stroller to civil rights marches, because as overwhelming as the circumstances may be, they believe, as I do, that a better future is possible for us all. Daily challenge to myself is to be a warrior in the battle. My challenge to you is to join that effort, to stand up for our ideals and our values. Let us not throw our hands. It's time to roll up our sleeves. Not now, not tomorrow, not ever. Years from now, our children and our grandchildren look up and lock eyes with us. They will ask us where we were when the stakes were so high. They will ask us what it was like. I didn't want to just tell them how we felt. I want us to tell them what we did. All right, and that's the end of the book. Once again, these are Kamala's right here. Here's Kamala's mama. Not a looker, not the best looker. She's dark skinned as hell. She could pass. Crazy. I wonder how she came out so light. Anyway, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. None of this matters. What does matter is this book that we read and the importance of this story. There's a lot that we learned from this book. I'm glad we finally did it. I wanted to do this before the election to show my channel is fair and balanced, and also to inform myself. We read Donald Trump's book. We read Kamala's book. Now we finished both. This has been Book React 5. Book React 5 is done. We did it. I told you, motherfuckers, I can't stop. Let's go. I'm just so happy. Because I really have been trying to do things out for weeks now, and I finally got it done. I was inspired to do this partially because I remember this big-ass book, biography, memoir by Hillary Clinton that stayed on my mama's nightstand for a year, and she was still in the middle of it. And I was like, I want to be able to read one of the big neoliberal books. I finally did. I read a big neoliberal book, and I'm actually proud of myself for doing that and getting that done. And even though a lot of this back end of this book is like pictures and, of her growing up in the Bay Area and all that sort of stuff, still was important to read, to show, and to develop and grow by looking at these stories. You feel me? And I know nobody else is in here because nobody else likes to read, or they just find this boring, or they would rather just watch girls twerking and stuff like that. But it's important that we read these stories. You feel me? It's important we learn from these stories, grow from these stories. And there's something inspirational about her story to some degree. But it's also disheartening to see that, in the pursuit of political power, she sort of gave up her authenticity to follow what she truly believes. Which is obviously left-wing radical politics, right? Left-wing radical politics are in Kamala's soul, but she's a person that plays the game and plays the game very, very well, right? And yeah. Anyway, this has been Book React 5. Simon Hill keeps it trill. Kamala Harris, the truths we hold. It was not easy, but we did it. If you got a book you want me to read, put it in the comment section. I'll probably be back tomorrow with another book we're going to blow through because I got to study because I'm trying to be the smartest sociologist on the planet, baby. Let's go. Y'all be easy out there. Peace.